Good evening, and tonight you wake inside Topkapi Palace in mid-17th century Istanbul, where cool marble corridors smell of rosewater and drifting oud smoke. Fountains murmur under oil lamps across hand-painted Iznik tiles, and even the simple act of waking another sleeper follows a rank so strict it can settle a grievance before sunrise. I am glad Priya from Tampines and Hannah from Melbourne are here again, because they commented on the last video and stayed with me until the end. Tell me where you are and what time it is for you, just like they did. And if you would like, please like and subscribe so you can fall asleep here every time. Have you ever felt how strange it is when a whole life fits inside a few rooms, and after a while the rooms begin to feel like weather? Then you step softly over the threshold of the night and into the palace. The marble holds the last cold of darkness, while rosewater, lamp oil, and a thin ribbon of oud drift through blue and red Iznik flowers that never sleep. By the time your eyes open, a woman at the far end of the dormitory is already folding yesterday's linen into neat pale squares without making a sound. You do not wake all at once. You rise by layers, the way the palace itself rises into morning. First, the faint splash of a courtyard fountain reaches you, then the dry whisper of cloth, then the small, serious sound of someone setting down a copper basin. Your blanket is still warm where your knees have tucked under it. The linen beneath your cheek feels cool and smooth. For one soft moment, you float between sleep and duty, which is the closest thing this palace allows to laziness. The dormitory is long and plain by palace standards. That still means it is better kept than many houses in the city below. The walls are lime-washed and clean. The floor is laid in worn boards and mats near the sleeping places, with stone beyond where the room meets the passage. You sleep among other attendants of the inner household. Your places are set in rows with just enough space for folded bedding, a low chest, and your slippers. Privacy exists here in the same way a cat obeys instructions. It is spoken of warmly and almost never seen. At night, the room is a field of breathing. In the dark, one woman sighs through her nose, another kerns once and settles. Someone dreams with a hand tucked under her cheek like a child. Someone else snores so lightly that it sounds like a polite disagreement with air. You know each sound without lifting your head. You know who keeps her blanket tight under her chin. You know who leaves one heel uncovered no matter the season. You know which woman will wake clear and calm, and which one will spend several heartbeats bargaining with fate and the mattress. Your own sleeping place is simple and exact. The pillow is firmer than kindness and smaller than you would choose. The blanket smells faintly of soap, wool, and cedar from the chest where it rests during the day. At your side sits the low wooden box that holds your little order of life. Inside are a comb, a folded headscarf, a spare chemise, a belt, soft slippers, and the tucked-away scraps of usefulness every attendant gathers. There is a bit of thread. There is a small cloth for polishing. There is a needle that vanishes only when urgently needed. No one springs upright in this room. That would be vulgar in any century, and it would be especially foolish here. Topkapi may be the most aggressively gated community in the known world, with excellent views and magnificent tiles, but it does not reward dramatic entrances before dawn. The dormitory already knows morning is near. A small lamp burns in a wall niche behind pierced metal, so its light falls soft and patterned across the floor. The flame makes the room look warmer than it feels. It throws gold over ankles, folded quilts, and the careful edge of a chest lid left open a finger's width. You lie still long enough to understand where you are. That matters here. The world beyond the palace walls has little use before first light. The city exists, of course. The Bosphorus exists. Boats and markets and narrow streets exist. Yet for you in this hour, they might as well be painted on a bowl and placed on a shelf. Your world is the inner household. You are a Kalfa, an attendant trained to move quietly, notice everything, and leave no trace of noticing. You serve the imperial women with comfort, neatness, and perfect discretion. You hear much, you repeat nothing. You belong to a place built on beautiful surfaces and sealed mouths. Even waking follows rank. That is the first rule, pressing gently on the room. The youngest women do not wake the most senior by tugging a shoulder like a sister at home. The right hand touches the right sleeve at the right time, and whole chains of small authority pass from bed to bed before dawn has fully agreed to arrive. A novice rises first near the door. She has been awake for several breaths already. You can tell by the stillness in her back. She rolls her bedding with a care that suggests she would like to avoid existing loudly. Then she crosses to the woman above her in rank and bends close enough for a whisper. The whisper is brief and shapeless. It is less a word than the idea of a word. That is often enough. The second woman opens her eyes, folds her blanket, and reaches for her scarf. Then she wakes the next. No one rushes, no one sprawls, no one mistakes the order, unless she has grown tired of peaceful employment. You wait your turn because you know your place in the ladder. That is not misery, it is architecture. This palace builds its mornings out of tiny rules, and if you learn the pattern, you can move through it with surprising ease. If you do not learn the pattern, Bash Kalfa Zainab will teach it to your soul with one raised eyebrow. You have not yet seen her this morning. That does not prevent you from feeling supervised. It never does. Bash Kalfa Zainab has the gift of being present even when she is elsewhere, which is useful in a head attendant and deeply inconvenient in every other living person. At last, the touch comes to your blanket edge. It is light and correct. You open your eyes fully and answer with the smallest nod. The woman above you in rank would not appreciate being thanked aloud, and you would not appreciate being the reason she looks disapproving before the day has properly started. You sit up and gather the blanket at once. The air touches your neck. Coolness slips into your sleeves. You place your feet into your slippers and feel the woven soles press flat under your weight. Your body is slow for one breath, then obedient, because habit is stronger than sleep in this place. Around you, the room becomes a quiet machine. Bedding rolls into even lengths. Pillows disappear into chests. Wool folds into squares, and then into narrower squares, because there is always one more fold possible if a senior woman is watching. Bare feet and slippered feet pass each other without brushing. No one owns much space. That makes neatness feel like a form of kindness. When your blanket is folded well, the room gains a little air. When your slippers are placed straight, the whole line of sleepers looks steadier. When a chest closes without a bang, peace remains available to everyone. You smooth the place where you slept. It is a simple gesture, though no one will inspect the imprint your body leaves in a mattress. Still, your hands flatten the linen and tug one corner true. You tell yourself this is for order. It is also because touching the bed goodbye makes rising feel less abrupt. Near the far wall, one of the older attendants wraps her shawl and stretches her back. The small movement travels through the room like permission. Others straighten, heads dip, sleeves rustle. A girl in the nearest row bites back a yawn, so large it reaches her eyes and makes her look briefly astonished by existence. You do not smile, but you feel the smile. This place teaches many forms of silence. Some are solemn, some are practical. Some are simply the quiet amusement of several tired women trying to become impressive before dawn. Your dormitory opens into a narrower passage with basins set beyond. The passage is lined with hooks for towels and cloths. A low shelf holds ewers, cups, and small dishes of soap. In the wall, high windows are screened with lattice, so the first hint of the sky arrives as a pale thought rather than a view. You take your towel and wait. Even washing has its order. A senior attendant goes first, then another, then you. No one complains because the line is too familiar for complaint and too short for tragedy. Besides, the water does a useful job on stubborn sleep and any lingering self-pity. When your turn comes, you step to the basin. The copper rim is cool under your fingers. The first pour of fountain water shocks your skin away with such honesty that it could qualify as a sermon. You draw breath through your nose and keep your shoulders still, because no one wins prizes here for reacting to cold. You wash your hands carefully. The skin of your knuckles tightens. Soap lifts clean and plain against the water. You rinse your face, and sleep leaves in clear little rivers. The second splash is easier. The third feels almost welcome, whereby another attendant wets a cloth and presses it to the back of her neck. You understand the wisdom at once. The air before dawn carries a coolness that slides through thin fabric and settles on the skin. The palace is stone, tile, and polished surfaces. It remembers the night longer than a wooden house would. You complete your ablutions in practiced order. The motions are small and familiar. Hands, mouth, face, arms, quiet rinsing, quiet breathing, quiet attention to the body that must serve for many hours before it rests again. There is comfort in repetition. No one needs to explain these acts to you now. Your hands know the sequence even when your mind is still waking in pieces. In a life where many things depend on rank, mood, and timing, water offers one mercy. It feels cold to everyone. You dry your face with the edge of the towel. The cloth is coarse in a useful way. It leaves your skin brisk and fresh. A drop clings beneath your jaw and slips down your throat before you can catch it. That small betrayal feels almost friendly. From deeper in the palace comes a faint smell of warm bread. It drifts so lightly that you almost miss it. Somewhere far from these rooms, ovens are already busy. Fires have been coaxed alive. Dough has changed its mind about being dough and become breakfast for people far above your place and far below your notice. The palace never truly sleeps. It only lowers its voice. In the kitchens, in the baths, in the outer courts, in the guard rooms, in the service passages, someone is always tending flame, water, cloth, or tray. You live inside a great breathing creature that happens to be tiled. You return to your chest and begin to dress. Your work clothes are folded in layers that make sense to your fingers. Then the loose trousers tied neat at the waist. Then the light inner robe that sits flat at the shoulders and gives you freedom to bend, lift, and vanish gracefully. You dress for usefulness, not display. The women you serve wear beauty like a second weather. Your task is different. You need sleeves that do not drag through rose water, hems that do not snag on thresholds, and ties that hold fast even when you are kneeling to adjust cushions or lift a brazier screen. You shake out the outer robe and slide your arms through. The fabric is not lavish, though it is finer than anything many women in the city will ever touch. It has been mended twice at one cuff by a hand better than your own. It smells faintly of lavender from the storage chest and a little of starch. Your belt goes on next. You pull it snug and settle it with one practiced tug. It gives shape to the robe and gathers you into readiness. A loose belt belongs to a distracted woman, and a distracted woman in the inner household soon acquires memorable feedback. You cover your hair. Your scarf wraps close and smooth. You tuck the edges behind your ears and pin the fold so it will not shift when you bend. A few stubborn strands try for freedom along your temple. You coax them back with two damp fingers and a look of personal disappointment. Beside you, another Kalfa is pinning her sleeve with her teeth. You pass her the fastening she cannot find. She accepts it with a nod so brief, it barely counts as social life. This is how affection often appears here. A pin offered, a sleeve straightened, a place kept in line near the basin without comment. At the end of the row, Fatima Hatun has already finished dressing. Of course she has. She stands with the calm of a woman who expects cloth to obey her on first request. Her robe falls in exact folds. Her scarf is perfect. Her smile is also perfect, which makes it much less soothing than it ought to be. Fatima has wanted the same post as you for 3 years. This is not a feud in the loud sense. No one here is permitted the luxury of loudness. Instead, she places herself just close enough to hear what should remain private, and just far enough to look innocent when someone turns toward her. This morning, she only adjusts her cuff and glances your way. The glance says she has noticed your damp hairline and the tiny crease at your belt. It also says she will remember both if memory becomes useful later. Her smile never slips. It is impeccable in the manner of a blade kept clean for decorative reasons. You lower your eyes to your own sleeve and smooth it once. There is no profit in feeding other people more detail. Silence in this palace is not empty. It is active. It is the careful placing of yourself beyond reach, like a porcelain cup set just far enough back from a greedy cat. Pamuk is not in the dormitory. That is a blessing to treasure quietly. The Sultan's favorite enormous white cat belongs everywhere, and may be removed from nowhere, which is a difficult management style in any mammal. When Pamuk sleeps on clean linen, the linen becomes cat linen, and everyone accepts this as destiny. You slip your feet fully into your soft shoes. The leather is worn to the shape of you. That feels intimate in a way the palace rarely allows. Your toes find their old places. Your heels settle. The floor no longer bites with cold so sharply, though the chill still rises through the soles. Now the room begins to empty. 1 by 1 and 2 by 2, attendants pass into the passage. Each woman carries her own neatness with her. The sleeping room sheds bodies and becomes again a plain chamber of chests, folded rolls, and a lamp watching the wall. The corridor greets you with stone-cool air and the low murmur of the nearest fountain. Sound travels differently here. It rounds itself on arches, it softens against tile. It slips under doors and returns as a hush, as if the palace is constantly reminding everyone to lower her voice. Oil lamps burn at intervals in niches along the walls. Their light rests warm and gold on hand-painted Iznik tiles. Blue leaves curl around red flowers. Green stems rise and bend. White grounds make the colors breathe even in the half-dark. Each panel looks patient. Each one has seen more gossip than it will ever tell. You walk with the others in small, quiet measure. The rule is not merely silence. It is controlled silence. Moving through these corridors is rather like being permanently on mute in a meeting you had no way to leave, except the carpets are better and everyone smells more strongly of rosewater. Your shoulders know the turns. Left past the tiled recess, right by the shuttered alcove. Along the stretch where the floor changes from worn stone to smoother marble. You could cross this path half asleep, which is fortunate, because half of you still is. Through a screened opening you catch a sliver of the outer sky. It is not yet dawn. The darkness above the courtyard is thinning, but only a little. The black has turned deep blue at the edges, like ink washed with water. Somewhere beyond, minarets wait for the first call. Here inside, the waiting feels enclosed and polished. The courtyard fountain keeps speaking to itself. Its water falls in patient little notes over carved stone. The sound threads through everything. It covers footfalls. It gentles the clink of metal. It turns the palace into a place where even hurry sounds composed. A junior attendant kneels near the passage with a small tray of folded cloths. You take one because she holds the tray at the right height for your rank. She does not lift her eyes. You do not thank her aloud. Courtesy here often takes the form of doing exactly what is expected, and not disturbing the air with extra feelings. At a corner near the service door, you meet the scent of oud more strongly. Some brazier has been freshened in the night. The smoke is thin and sweet dark. It hangs in the passage for a moment, then loosens. Rosewater cools it. Lamp oil warms it. Together they make the smell of luxury working very hard to seem effortless. You pause to adjust a wick in one niche lamp. The flame has sunk low and is licking smoke into the metal shade. With a careful pinch of the tool, you lift the wick just enough. The light steadies. It spreads brighter over the blue tiles and picks out a crack in the glaze that looks like a tiny river. This is the sort of thing your hands learn to notice, not because anyone praises the lamp itself. They do not. They praise or blame the feeling a room gives when they enter it. Your work lives in those feelings, in warm towels, straight cushions, fresh water, and the useful absence of friction. You are sworn to that absence. You keep comfort ready before it is named. You remove evidence of disorder before it becomes a story. You know which lady likes her shawl folded narrow, and which likes it soft and rounded. You know who wants rosewater, and who prefers orange blossom. You know when to disappear faster than steam. For now, before the household fully wakes, your duty is preparation. That means checking lamps, water, cloths, and the small calm of each passage. Dawn in the women's quarters is not dramatic. It is built from 100 ordinary things done properly before anyone of rank needs to ask. At the next turning you hear a wet little drip, then another, then a third, distinct and resigned, like a person accepting criticism from the ceiling. You already know what waits beyond the arch before you see him, because the palace has very few mysteries, and one of them is never how the floor became damp. Mehmet the water-bearer stands in the outer service court with his copper ewer. The ewer leaks. Naturally it leaks. It may leak from personal conviction. It may leak only when Mehmet holds it. The truth has not yet chosen a side. He looks down at the growing puddle with his usual baffled sincerity, as though water has once again behaved in a surprising and rather hurtful way. You watch through the lattice for one brief moment. Mehmet shifts his grip. The dripping improves for half a heartbeat, and then resumes from a new location. He frowns at the vessel with the patient disappointment of a man who keeps hoping metal will develop principles. A woman beside you tilts her head toward the puddle, The movement is tiny, but it carries shared understanding. No one says a word. No one needs to. There are some palace traditions never written in any rule book, and one of them is quietly observing Mehmet and the ewer continue their long, damp courtship. You move on before amusement becomes visible. That is another useful skill. Laughter exists here, but it wears soft shoes. It hides under lowered lashes and in the corners of mouths that keep working. The corridor bends toward a broader hall lined with tiles to shoulder height. Above them, white plaster climbs into the dim. The lamps set along the wall turn the glaze bright in spots and shadowed in others. Tulips, carnations, curling leaves, and cypress trees drift past you in a slow painted garden that never needs watering and never loses a petal. Your hand brushes the marble ledge beneath one panel. It is cold enough to startle the skin again. The palace is full of such reminders. Warmth must be brought in by lamp, brazier, body, or sun. Stone keeps its own counsel. It lends comfort only after long acquaintance. At this hour, the halls belong to workers. A laundress passes carrying folded cloth on both forearms, like fresh snow. Another attendant kneels to polish a brass latch until it reflects lamplight in a small trembling oval. Somewhere farther on, someone shakes out a rug with such control that the sound is more sigh than snap. You know many of these women by face and footstep. You know who moves with a slight drag on the left side. You know who smells faintly of mint leaves she chews after meals. You know who has 4 children in a district you will never visit, and who misses them most on rainy days, though she never says so first. Stories live here in fragments. A cough from one room, a folded letter passed to be delivered, a hem mended twice in the same week, a sudden request for better lamps near one chamber. The palace is full of private weather systems, and you learn to read them without staring at the sky. Yet the world beyond the walls does not really belong to you now. This is not said each morning, because it does not need saying. It sits in the stone, it sits in the gates, it sits in the fact that Topkapi offers every amenity a person could imagine, then makes leaving difficult enough that no resident can submit a negative review. You do not dwell on that. There is no room in this hour for broad sorrow. There is only the next task, the next folded cloth, the next lamp, the next turn in the corridor. Human beings can get used to almost anything if it arrives wrapped in routine and placed beside a fountain. At a low table in an antechamber, you begin arranging small copper ewers. They have been polished already. Your job is placement. Spouts angled the same way, handles easy to reach, cups matched, claws folded beside them with edges aligned. This is not glory, though there are mornings when the straight line of well-ordered things feels almost holy. A younger girl brings fresh towels in a stack too high for her arms. You take half before the tower slides. The top cloth shifts anyway and brushes the floor. Her eyes widen. You replace it at once in the set-aside pile for washing, because the rules of cleanliness are clear, even when life is not. She exhales and almost becomes liquid with relief. You remember being that new. You remember how large every mistake felt in the first months. A dropped spoon seemed career-ending. A wrinkled cloth seemed like an omen. Then time passed, and you learned the great secret of palace service. Most disasters are only inconveniences wearing nice clothing. Of course, some inconveniences carry canes. You think of Bash Kalfa Zeynep again and feel your spine lengthen. She governs the inner household with a rosewood cane that taps on marble like punctuation from heaven. 1 tap means she is reminding you she exists. 2 taps mean something has gone wrong nearby. 3 taps mean the day has officially begun, whether the sun agrees or not. She is your HR manager, building superintendent, and disapproving grandmother combined into one immovable woman. If architecture could develop a raised eyebrow, it would become Bash Kalfa Zeynep. Her silence can review your performance in detail. Her actual words are not many. This economy makes each one land with the crispness of a well-folded towel. You are not afraid of her exactly. Fear is too sharp a word for mourning. What you feel is a constant respectful readiness, mixed with the small desire not to become the lesson attached to her next glance. In this, you are not alone. As you lift another ewer into place, you hear footsteps pause behind you. You do not turn too quickly. That suggests nerves. You do not turn too slowly. That suggests attitude. Palace life is full of these narrow footbridges over silly little abysses. It is only Fatima Hatun. Her smile arrives before her words, which remain blessedly absent. She adjusts one folded cloth that does not need adjusting, making it perhaps half a finger neater than before. Then she glides on, leaving behind a faint scent of soap and the impression that your table has just been judged by a committee. You let the cloth remain where she placed it. There is no value in correcting a correction. If you moved it back, she would remember. If you leave it, you remember. The palace runs on such little exchanges, polish small enough to pass as nothing. From farther down the hall comes the soft strike of a door sliding open, then the careful movement of more feet. The inner household is waking in layers now. Not the great ladies yet, not fully, but the chambers nearest theirs begin to stir. Trays will soon move, lamps will need trimming again, water will need warming elsewhere. You finish the table and step back to inspect it. Straight lines calm the eye. Matched handles look competent. A clean cloth can improve a mood before a single word is spoken. People think power lives in decrees, jewels, and rooms with carved ceilings. Much of it really lives in whether the first water of the day is placed where a hand expects it. You turn into another passage that opens beside a small fountain court. Here the air is cooler. The sound of water is stronger. A few early birds have begun somewhere above the roofs, though they still seem uncertain about committing to morning. The sky beyond the upper openings has paled from ink to washed blue-gray. You pass a bench, where folded cushions wait for a chamber to be set in order. The fabrics under your fingers are rich even in dim light. Some are smooth as still water. Some have a raised pattern that catches at the skin. Wealth here often feels tactile before it looks grand. It arrives as softness, polish, warmth, scent, and the absence of rough edges. At the fountain, you refill a small basin from the spout. The water runs clear and quick. It rings softly in the metal. A bead splashes your wrist and slicks into your sleeve. You set the basin down and wipe the rim dry, because no one wants the first thing she touches to be the evidence of someone else's haste. Across the court, a lamp burns near a painted door. You see the gold light move over blue tile and think, not for the first time, that this palace is built to flatter half-darkness. Daylight will reveal everything later. Dawn keeps its secrets longer. Dawn turns polished metal kind and marble forgiving. You stand for one breath and listen. This is the sound of a contained world. Water, cloth, low footsteps, a latch, a distant murmur. Somewhere much farther away, the city is preparing itself too, but those sounds do not reach you with any force. The walls hold, the gates hold, your life holds within them. You are not alone, though solitude lives in the work. Service is a crowded form of invisibility. You are always among people, yet much of your value lies in passing without disturbance. You become expert at presence without claim. You learn how to fill a room with care and remove your person from the memory of doing it. That skill would be strange anywhere else. Here it is precious. Here it can shape your whole standing. The right robe from the right patron can pivot a career overnight, and so can the reputation for hearing everything and repeating nothing. Ottoman palace life has its own version of influence, though the followers are mainly other women, measuring hems and opportunities. You do not chase such thoughts before dawn. Ambition is tiring on an empty stomach. You save it for later, when the lamps are higher and the day has shown what sort of mood it intends to have. For now, you check the basin, the cloths, the lamp, the latch, and your own breathing. On your way back through the hall, the first faint call begins outside. It reaches you softened by walls and distance. The sound is not loud here. It arrives as a thread through stone, reminding every room that beyond these painted surfaces, a city still unfolds around the palace like water around a ship. The women nearest you pause almost invisibly, not for long, just enough for the moment to settle. Dawn has crossed from preparation into time itself. The palace hears and continues, as it always does, with a little more certainty in every step. You move toward the main passage of the attendants' quarters. More women are there now. Robes are straight, scarves are pinned, trays wait along the wall. One girl carries a bundle of fresh linen against her chest, like a serious white animal. Another holds a small charcoal pan, ready to be taken where warmth is wanted first. No one speaks above a whisper. Most do not speak at all. It is not grim, it is practiced. The silence here is less empty than full, packed with awareness, rank, expectation, and the endless small calculations that keep a large household from turning into a basket of dropped spoons. You take your place near the arch. This is where you will wait for the formal signal of the day. Around you, shoulders settle into composure, hands still, eyes lower or lift, according to rank and habit. Someone 2 places away presses a thumb into her palm to wake herself more fully. Another smooths her apron once, and then refuses herself a second smoothing. There is a peculiar peace and shared readiness. You are all awake before the sun. You are all dressed before the city properly stirs. You are all standing inside one of the richest households on earth, waiting for permission to continue doing exactly what you are already doing. A lamp flame gives a tiny flutter in its niche. The fountain keeps murmuring in the nearby court. Rosewater lingers in the air from the cloths and basins set out moments before. Under it sits the warmer smell of oil and the darker sweetness of oud, faint now but still present, like a memory that has not gone home. Then, from down the marble corridor, comes one measured tap. You do not turn your head. One tap means she exists, which no one had seriously doubted. The effect moves through the line anyway. A shoulder eases back, a chin lifts a fraction. Somewhere inside several women, entire moral inventories are completed in an instant. A pause follows. In that pause, the palace seems to listen to itself. Lamps hold, water falls, cloth waits. A sky beyond the screened openings grows a breath paler. Then the rosewood cane sounds again, and again. 3 taps on marble carry cleanly through the passage, and without a single raised voice, the whole inner household understands that the day has officially begun. The first thing you touch each morning is not water or bread, but folded cloth. You stand beside a low cedar chest before dawn fully arrives over Istanbul. You smell rosewater on the room air and a thin thread of oud smoke from some patient lamp nearby. You hear the courtyard fountains speaking in their steady little voices through carved screens. The garments wait in neat stacks beside a polished bronze mirror. They look calm on the chest. They do not look like a task for 7 pairs of hands. They look almost innocent, which is how clothing begins trouble in a palace. You learn very quickly that getting dressed here is not a private act. It is a small ceremony performed before breakfast and before thought feels fully awake. Your body is the peg on which the rules hang. The inner rooms still hold the night's coolness. The marble under your bare feet keeps a memory of darkness. Oil lamps throw warm gold over hand-painted Iznik tiles, and the blue flowers on them seem more awake than you are. You start with the shirt that touches the skin. It is soft white linen with a neck opening small enough to teach patience. The cloth smells faintly of soap and sun because it dries on lines in hidden court and comes back folded like a secret. You lift it carefully so the sleeves do not brush the floor. The hem is plain. The stitching at the cuff is tiny and even. Someone with calm hands spends a good stretch of life, making sure your morning begins without a loose thread. You pull the shirt over your head and feel the linen cool your shoulders first. Then your own warmth reaches it. The cloth settles along your arms with a quiet rustle that sounds like dry leaves being polite. Wide trousers come next. They are cut for ease and tucked close at the ankle so the fabric billows where it may and behaves where it must. You step in 1 foot at a time and feel the drawstring brush your waist. There is a way to tie that string which says you are trained. There is another way which says you dress alone in a hurry and perhaps also under a goat shed. You use the first way because goats hold no senior post in Topkapi. The trousers this morning are a pale cream with a faint woven stripe. The stripe shows only when lamplight catches it sideways. That is how much attention this place gives to things most people never notice and then somehow notice immediately. Over the shirt comes a fitted inner robe with narrow sleeves. It sits close through the rims and opens down the front with little cloth loops. You hold your breath for 1 moment as the loops find their partners. Then, a short vest comes over that robe. Its lining is smooth. Its outer face is dyed a soft blue that stays firmly in the family of modest blues. You do not wear the deeper blue favored by women above your rank, and the cloth knows it. Color is not decoration here. Color is a sentence. Sometimes it is a full paragraph with footnotes and witnesses. You learn which shades belong to whom before you learn the habits of all the corridors. A muted blue tells one story. A faded rose tells another. Cream suggests cleanliness and restraint, which are useful things to wear when silence is your job. You do not reach for bright crimson. You do not drift toward a proud green without knowing exactly whose eye will land on you. You do not wander near cloth with too much gold thread unless someone powerful has very recently told you to wander there. A wrong color on the wrong body is not merely ugly. It is a statement that nobody remembers making and everybody remembers seeing. It hangs in the air like smoke from a lamp trimmed badly. The palace women above you receive robes as signs of favor, rank, closeness, and changing weather in the heart. A robe can warm the body and alter a future in the same afternoon. The Kaftan hierarchy is Ottoman influencer culture in its purest form, only with better tailoring and fewer opportunities to post about it. You watch the racks in the laundry court when you can. You watch which silks travel with guards and which cottons travel with size. You watch who gets new braid at the cuffs and who gets neat repairs so perfect they almost count as a compliment. Your own place sits lower and safer in the stack. Your fabrics are fine enough to honor the household and plain enough to avoid becoming a conversation. You aim, each morning, to look exactly as proper as the room requires, and not one grain more. That is harder than it sounds. A sleeve lining flashes when you lift an arm. A sash edge peeks out when you kneel. Even the little bit of cloth visible at the throat says whether someone above you has taken an interest. This morning, the next robe waiting on the chest is dove blue with tiny sprigs worked near the hem. The stitching is silk, but only just silk. It catches light like a whisper rather than a proclamation. That is the point. You slide your arms in and feel the weight settle lower than the linen did. This cloth has intention. It asks your shoulders to sit back and your chin to level itself without vanity. By the time the robe closes, you already stand like someone being watched. In Topkapi, you usually are being watched, often by nobody visible, often by everybody. The outer kaftan rests alone on a folded square of white cloth. Nobody places it directly on bare wood. Nobody leaves it where wandering steam or a drifting ember might find it. Its color this morning stays within your lane, which feels less like freedom and more like good weather. It is a gentle gray blue with a narrow band of silver thread at the front edges. The silver is small enough to seem accidental and expensive enough to be entirely deliberate. You do not put it on by yourself, though you have hands and a working understanding of sleeves. The problem is not ability. The problem is order. Order is the true fabric of the palace, and cloth only borrows the appearance. The first pair of hands belongs to the woman who checks the underlayers. She smooths the linen at your shoulder and tugs the shirt hem straight beneath the robe. She says nothing, because the line between care and comment is best left uncrossed before sunrise. The second pair lifts the inner robe at the back and settles it cleanly over your hips. She checks the fall of the cloth where it meets the trousers. A wrinkle there grows into a story by midday, and nobody wants to spend noon explaining a crease. The third pair fastens the front loops you cannot properly see. She works from the middle outward, never from the throat down. Starting at the throat looks eager. Starting at the hem looks careless. Starting at the middle says your household still respects reason. The fourth pair manages the vest and presses the shoulder seams flat with warm palms. She pulls once at each sleeve. She does not overpull. The garment must look lived in by noon, but it must not begin the day already arguing with your body. Then the outer kaftan comes forward like an important guest. One woman holds it by the collar. One woman supports the weight at the hem. Another keeps the sleeves open so the lining never brushes a dusty floor or an uncertain hand. You place your right arm first. You always place your right arm first, unless a superior garment demands another order. The left follows at once, because hesitation with a sleeve looks like doubt, and doubt is visible from astonishing distances. The collar settles only under senior hands. A younger attendant may lift. A younger attendant may carry. A younger attendant may admire in complete silence from a respectful amount of air away. She does not settle the collar unless the morning has gone very strange indeed. You feel the cloth come around your shoulders. You feel its weight distribute itself across your back and arms. You stand very still while fingers smooth the front panels, so the silvered edging falls in one obedient line. Only one woman may tie the inner sash on mornings of inspection. Her knot sits flat every time, which is why she is trusted with the task. The knot must disappear beneath the outer layer like a thought you keep for yourself. Another pair of hands places the broader belt over that sash. The belt is not showy. It is firm enough to hold shape, and soft enough not to creak when you bend. A creaking belt in the inner quarters is the sort of memory that follows a person for years. No hand crosses another hand without purpose. No one reaches over a senior woman's wrist. No one adjusts the front while someone else still works the back. The order matters so much that you begin to feel the sequence in your bones. You also learn where your own hands belong. They hold the robe edge when told. They lift your hair clear of a closing collar. They never flutter toward a senior woman's work, as if you might suddenly improve it by wanting to help. Helping is dangerous when rules already exist. It is a little like rearranging a prayer because you prefer the sound of it. Perhaps you do. Perhaps the heavens do not invite your revisions. By the time the seventh pair of hands leaves your shoulders, the kaftan feels less like clothing and more like architecture. You move inside it rather than merely wear it. You become one more carefully arranged interior of the palace. The final touches are small and endless. A cuff turns back by the width of a fingernail. A stray thread vanishes between two fingers. The front edge is stroked downward 3 times, so the fabric remembers gravity and does not improvise. The room smells now of linen, warm skin, lamp oil, cedar, and the faint sharp sweetness of starch. It is not an exciting smell. It is a working smell. You come to find it deeply reassuring. You never forget that each garment also has a social life. Cloth travels through hands, rooms, shelves, inventories, moods, and rumors. The person who folds your robe learns things about your rank that no speech needs to explain. In the palace, washing tells its own quiet truths. Some garments go to the basins daily because visible freshness is part of their duty. Some go less often and spend more time being brushed, aired, and coaxed back into grace with damp cloth and patience. Summer pieces feel lighter and almost forgiving. Winter pieces carry hidden warmth in their lining and ask your arms to work a little harder. Even the season joins the hierarchy and insists you notice it. There are chests for everyday robes and chests for better ones. There are wraps for travel within the palace, which sounds grand until you realize travel means crossing 3 courtyards without becoming a drafty spectacle. There are cloth covers to keep dust away, because dust is the only thing in the palace more persistent than protocol. You see all this before breakfast most days. You learn it without anyone sitting you down to explain. The palace teaches as cats do. It places itself in your path until you understand where not to step. Pamuk proves this point by appearing in the doorway exactly when the outer belt is being checked. The great white creature flows into the room like misplaced luxury and sits on a folded scarf. You do not comment, because complaining about Pamuk is not an available option in this world or any sensible one. You simply wait while someone lifts the scarf's free end with 2 fingers. Pamuk remains on the rest of it, like a small retired pasha with opinions about upholstery. The scarf comes free in slow stages, and the cat regards you all as if human scheduling is beneath discussion. At last, the scarf is yours. It smells faintly of rosewater where it was stored, and distinctly of cat where reality happened. You fold it over your hair and pin it without any visible battle. The pin itself must come from the correct hand. A senior woman offers it point first, so the receiving hand does not fumble. A junior woman may fetch the pin, but she does not place it near your temple unless instructed clearly enough to survive witness testimony. You tilt your head while the scarf smooths over your hair. The fabric rests flatter on one side than the other until a thumb corrects it. Symmetry matters, though not the cruel kind. It only asks that both halves of your face agree to serve together. Then Fatima Hatun appears beside you with exactly the right expression for unnecessary assistance. She has not been called. She has not been absent either. She occupies that special patch of air reserved for women who wish to hear everything and never seem to move into hearing range at all. Her smile is impeccable this morning. It is the kind of smile that could bless a child, flatter a patron, or preserve a grudge without changing shape. You have seen all 3 uses. She lifts one hand toward your shoulder. She pauses just short of touching. That pause is the whole performance. It says she notices a possible fault, and it also says she is gracious enough to save you from it. You know very well there is no fault there. The shoulder seam lies flat. The silver edging falls straight. The only thing truly in danger is the peace of the room. Still, You incline your head the smallest amount, because refusal must wear soft shoes. Fatima brushes the fabric once, with 2 fingers that improve nothing and confirm everything. She murmurs that the morning light can be unkind to certain shades of blue. You thank her with the face of a woman sworn to silence, which is a skill in itself. Your eyes lower, your mouth remains neutral. Your shoulders say nothing at all, though several useful phrases pass briefly through your soul. Fatima glances at the robe stack as if by chance. She remarks that some colors rise in favor and some fade. She does not say whose favor. She does not need to. You stand there in your proper gray blue and let her words flutter off like ash. In a palace, the wrong answer to a vague remark can breed cousins. Silence, by contrast, usually dies childless. Fatima's memory is longer than her smile suggests. You know this from experience and from the experiences she carefully leaves visible in others. She remembers who borrowed a ribbon in spring and who failed to return gratitude by autumn. She also remembers that you want the same advancement she wants. 3 years is a long time to share corridors with a person who smiles like folded paper. The paper is elegant, and still you do not wish to get a finger under its edge. This morning she offers to check your cuff braid. She does not need to check your cuff braid. The braid sits there quite peacefully, minding its own business and asking only not to become part of Fatima's strategy. You extend your hand because refusing too fast would look like fear. Fatima turns your wrist with care and studies the embroidery. Her touch is light, but it lingers exactly long enough to show she may touch you if she chooses, and call it service. The braid is a simple pattern of tiny leaves and silver gray thread. It belongs to your station and no other. Fatima lets the cuff go and says the stitching is very neat for a piece worn so often, which is not praise and not criticism, and somehow both. You feel the room continue around her. The fountain murmurs. Cloth whispers. Someone folds linen at the far table with quick, neat motions. It is almost impressive how ordinary a rivalry can sound before breakfast. Then a single tap carries across the marble. Rosewood on stone. Everyone in the room becomes fractionally more upright. Bash Kulfa Zainab has arrived, or more accurately, she has materialized from architecture again. She does this often enough that you begin to suspect the walls keep a private door just for her. The palace itself appears reluctant to face her directly and prefers to release her in measured doses. This morning she speaks not a word. She only stands near the threshold with her rosewood cane resting against her palm. Her raised eyebrow begins the inspection before the rest of her face bothers to participate. You line with the others and feel the cold of the marble through your slippers waiting on the floor. You have not put them on yet. Somehow being barefoot before her makes every toe remember its sins. Zainab's eyebrow moves first to Hems. It travels upward with a speed that feels slow and a slowness that feels surgical. By the time it reaches your face, you have remembered every knot you tied since childhood, and doubt all of them. She inspects without touching because she does not need to touch. Her gaze reads cloth, the way scribes read ink. She sees if the front edge pulls. She sees if the cuff sits a breath too high. She sees if one side of your scarf believes in liberty. Bash Kulfa Zainab is your HR manager, building superintendent, and disapproving grandmother folded into one immovable woman with a rosewood cane. Her eyebrow could file its own formal complaint, and likely already has. One raised line above her eye can mean redo the sash. It can mean you are standing as if you slept in a barrel. It can mean she is simply reminding you that existence remains conditional upon standards. The nuance lives in tiny muscles, and you become a devoted student of tiny muscles. This morning, the eyebrow pauses at your belt knot. You feel your pulse consider an unhelpful hobby. Then the eyebrow lifts half a grain higher and slides away. Relief in the palace is usually silent and never complete. A second woman in line receives the full version of that eyebrow. Nothing dramatic happens. Nobody gasps. She only steps out, reties one shoulder fastening, and returns with the expression of a person who has learned something ancient and damp. Zainab gives one tap of the cane. One tap means she is simply reminding you she exists, which is almost more effective than disapproval. Disapproval can end. Her existence appears permanent. You finally step into your slippers. The inside is soft leather worn smooth by many mornings. The tops are embroidered with small twirling vines in dark thread that catches at lamplight and hides any scuff acquired during honest labor. They fit close around your feet and leave your heels free enough to breathe. The soles are thin. They ask for grace and provide very little assistance with the marble's opinion of dawn. The marble remains cool, calm, and absolutely uninterested in your comfort. Your first step always tells the truth about the morning. If you place it too sharply, a sound clicks and betrays impatience. If you drag, the soft leather sighs against stone and betrays sleepiness. You aim for the middle path known as trained invisibility, walking silently as its own daily lesson. You set the front of the foot down first, and let the rest follow with care. Your weight spreads gently, your knees stay loose, your shoulders do not bounce like loaves being carried to market. The embroidered slipper is beautiful, but beauty here works for a living. It must bend, grip, and remain quiet while crossing polished halls. It must survive sudden turns, lowered trays, and the occasional encounter with cat fur that appears as if woven from air. You step from the dressing room into the corridor, and feel the cold marble come up through the soles at once. The chill is not cruel. It is brisk in a practical way, like water poured into a copper basin before the sun warms it. The corridor stretches pale and blue ahead of you. Isnic tiles hold flowers that never wilt, and leaves that never ask watering. Oil lamps and wall niches throw gold light across them, so each painted stem appears briefly alive, and then painted again as you pass. The fountains in the courtyard speak through every opening. Their sound settles over the palace like a second set of walls. It hides little slips and soft footsteps, though never quite enough, to save a careless person from herself. You keep your hands low and your elbows close. A well-dressed attendant must not let sleeves swing into jars, braziers, lamp chains, or rank. The palace is full of all four, and rank is by far the most dangerous to disturb. Corners require special thought. The hem of your kaftan arrives a blink after the rest of you, so you learn to turn with modesty and geometry. Too wide, and the edge brushes a tile bench. Too tight, and you bump the carved screen that has stood there longer than your entire family remembers. A raised lip of marble waits under door curtains and rugs. You lift the hem with one hand only when necessary, never high enough to show panic, and place your foot as if you knew the threshold would be there, because of course you did. At first you think silence means not speaking. Soon you learn silence also means not jingling, not scraping, not breathing into cloth too hard, and not letting your slippers slap the floor like wet fish. Being sworn to silence in these corridors is essentially being permanently on mute in a meeting you had no mechanism to leave. Even your keys, if you carry them, must be wrapped or tied so they do not tattle. Even your bracelets, if you have any modest permitted ones, must not announce every turn. The palace enjoys beauty, but it prefers beauty that knows when to lower its voice. You pass other attendants moving the same careful way. One carries folded towels warmed by embrasure. One balances a tray with tiny cups and a narrow-necked coffee pot. One bears fresh linen and looks at nothing except the path ahead and the corner after that. Their clothes tell you their place before their faces do. A darker sash suggests senior duty, a finer edging suggests closer service. A richer dye means favor or trust or both, while your own calm gray-blue says you are useful, respectable, and not invited to become the center of any room. That suits you very well. The center of a room is where accidents happen and names get spoken. From the outer side of the courtyard comes the soft clank of copper, and then a silence that has a very familiar shape. A heartbeat later, you catch sight of Mehmet the water-bearer staring at a growing puddle with sincere bafflement. The copper ewer leans in his hand like an accomplice pretending innocence. Nobody has yet solved whether the ewer leaks on its own or only when Mehmet holds it. He studies the water as if it rose from the marble by private arrangement. You pass with eyes lowered in inward sympathy, because the palace has room for many mysteries, and one of them wears Mehmet's face. The puddle glimmers in the passage where morning light reaches the floor. You shorten one step and lengthen the next without breaking rhythm. Silent walking becomes more advanced when the lesson includes surprise water and a witness who still looks offended by physics. Once past the puddle, you feel your shoulders soften again under the kaftan's weight. The cloth warms slowly with your movement. The belt holds everything in its proper line, and you begin to understand why the dressing ritual takes so many hands. Without order at the body starts inventing opinions. As the morning deepens, More colors begin to move through the inner palace. Soft plum passes one way, warm brown passes another. A woman in pale lilac crosses an arch and vanishes behind a screen before your second blink. Each shade carries meaning beyond simple liking. Certain blues speak of one level of trust, certain reds belong far above your reach and do not apologize for it. White linen at the cuffs tells the story of good laundering, which in some circumstances counts nearly as much as lineage. A robe's lining matters too. A modest outer color with a richer hidden lining can say restraint under favor. A brighter outer cloth with plain lining can say temporary display, which is a dangerous game unless the person wearing it owns enough status to make danger look decorative. You learn to read these things because nobody writes them down for you in a kind little booklet. Topkapi Palace is essentially the most aggressively gated community in the known world, with excellent views and very firm rules against leaving a negative review. You survive by observing everything and discussing nothing. Observation includes cloth care. A stain near the hem gets treated fast with damp linen and soap before it sets ideas into the weave. Dust on the shoulder comes off with a soft brush. Silk takes another sort of patience entirely and likes to remind everyone of that. Storage has its own ritual. Robes rest folded with tissue-thin cloth between better pieces so metallic thread does not catch. Cedar chests hold back insects. Rose petals or lavender may be tucked nearby for scent, though never so much that the garment arrives before you do. You sometimes help air robes in shaded courtyards, where breeze moves gently and no harsh sun chews the dye. Fabrics breathe there like people released from formal company. You smooth them over lines and feel how each one holds memory of its wearer in the bend of a sleeve. Those memories are not sentimental. A favored lady's robe wears differently at the wrist because she gestures more with one hand. A senior attendant's cuffs grow soft where keys rub through cloth day after day. Your own kaftans polish slightly at the hip where trays and folded linens come to rest. Even shoe wear tells tales. A woman who turns fast marks one edge of the sole. A woman who kneels often softens the upper over her instep. By the time a pair of slippers retires, it has already kept a diary for anyone trained to read leather. This morning your slippers still feel new enough to ask for careful treatment. The embroidery at the toe remains crisp. The leather grips the marble with a dry whisper. You walk as though balancing a bowl of milk inside your chest and prefer not to spill it. A turn in the corridor brings you beside a long window lattice. Through it you glimpse the Bosphorus holding pale morning light like folded silver. For a breath you remember that the world outside exists and contains breezes not assigned by rank. Then the palace closes around you again in tile, lamp glow, and rules that fit more tightly than your belt. The sensation is not unpleasant. It is simply complete. At the next alcove, Fatima Hatun appears once more, which is impressive even by her standards. You begin to suspect she travels by a system of hidden vents known only to ambitious women and persistent cats. Her smile arrives half a moment before the rest of her, as if it scouts the corridor. She notices the angle of your scarf end and offers to tuck it more securely. The scarf is secure. It could survive a modest storm and perhaps a sermon. Fatima still raises a hand with that same air of generous intervention. You pause because not pausing would turn the whole exchange into a statement. Fatima folds the scarf edge inward by a width so small only 2 saints and 1 spiteful rival could measure it. She tells you the line now sits more harmoniously with your collar. You thank her with another measured incline. She replies that harmony is often all that stands between order and embarrassment. Then she drifts away just far enough to claim innocence if anyone noticed she had been lingering again. Her perfume stays a moment after she goes. It is light and expensive and never quite strong enough to violate a rule. That is Fatima entire. She does not break rules when she can coax them into standing slightly crooked on your side. You continue through the corridor where rugs lie in select places to soften sound and warm the feet of those who rank above plain marble. Your slippers change voice on wool. The step becomes softer, heavier, more hidden. Then stone returns and reminds you to gather yourself once more. A pair of attendants ahead carry a folded ceremonial robe between them. Their hands are placed exactly at marked points along the cloth, one near the collar and one supporting the weight below. Neither lets the hem dip. Neither speaks. Even unattended garments in this palace seem to command an escort. Watching them, you remember your own first weeks. Your hands always want to help in the wrong place then. You think more fingers mean more safety. In truth, too many eager fingers make silk nervous and hierarchy furious. Now your body knows better. It knows when to step back from a dressing stool. It knows when to offer both palms for a folded piece and when only the left may receive. It knows that one wrong reach can feel louder than a dropped tray. The silence around all this does not feel empty. It feels busy. Tiny signals pass everywhere through eyes, breath, posture, finger position, and the angle of a waiting hand. Whole paragraphs travel between women without troubling the air. By the time you reach the antechamber near the inner women's quarters, the day's scents have shifted. Rosewater still lingers. Oud smoke still threads along the ceiling. Under them come bread, hot milk, and a small stern note of coffee for rooms where higher mornings begin. You stop with several others to be looked at one last time. No one says so. The stopping itself says it. Bash Kalfa Zeynep stands by a column where the light catches the smooth grain of her cane. She has chosen a place that gives her every advantage, and you none, which is exactly what makes her good at this work. Her eyebrow is already prepared. She scans the line with that terrible economy of motion. Your hem first, your slippers next, then the belt, the cuff, the scarf, the posture, the expression, and perhaps the private quality of your soul. The soul, if untidy, should at least avoid showing through the linen. One attendant receives 3 taps somewhere behind you. You do not turn to look. 3 taps mean disapproval, and even disapproval sounds calm in Zeynep's hand. It is not a dramatic sound. It is worse. It is organized. When she reaches you, her eyebrow rises a fraction at the very edge of your left sleeve. You follow the direction of her gaze and understand at once. A thread from the undercuff has worked free. It is no longer than a grain on, but under her eye, it glows like a declaration of moral collapse. You pinch it away with your nails and smooth the braid flat. Zeynep gives no sign except that the eyebrow returns to earth. No words are spoken. Your correction enters the morning and disappears there, exactly as it should. Then one tap comes from the cane, just one. She is reminding you she exists. It is oddly comforting in the way a distant thundercloud can be comforting when it chooses someone else's field. You move on at last into the rooms where service begins and visibility narrows. Your kaftan settles around you with each step. The silver edge stays true. The belt holds. The scarf lies obediently. 7 pairs of hands have done their work. At the doorway, Pamuk lies stretched across the threshold in full imperial sprawl. The white fur spreads like a dropped cloud. 2 attendants pause with trays and simply adjust their route around him, because the highest-ranking obstacle in the palace has chosen his ground for the day. You angle your steps and let the hem clear his tail by a prayer's width. Pamuk opens one eye, finds your caution acceptable, and returns to his strenuous rest. No one removes him. No one would enjoy the outcome. Inside, the marble is warmer from nearby braziers, though still cool enough to keep you alert. The fountains continue their low talk outside. Lamps glow against blue tile. Women move, cloth gleams, coffee waits, and morning at last turns into the day's long, quiet labor. You begin the work for which the dressing exists. You carry comfort. You carry secrecy. You carry small things in correct order through large, beautiful rooms and leave no mark except the fact that everything is somehow ready before anyone asks. The kaftan helps you do this because it reminds you who you are in every fold. The color keeps you in your lane. The weight keeps your shoulders honest. The sleeves limit foolishness. The belt remembers your spine when your thoughts drift toward warm bread. By midday, the garments will warm and soften with use. The linen at your wrists will crease. The slippers will learn the floor better. Your scarf may need one discreet correction where the day has breathed on it. None of that feels like failure. It feels like life, entering the ceremony without ruining it. For now, though, the morning still clings to you. The cedar scent still lingers in the seams. The starch still keeps a little firmness at the cuff. The marble still holds the chill of dawn like a careful secret. You pass through the inner corridor with the silence you have dressed for. Your steps make almost no sound. Your robe says exactly what it should, and not one word more. In a palace built from rules, That is a kind of peace. And so your day begins, not with a grand command or a ringing bell, but with cloth settling over your shoulders in the right order. It takes 7 pairs of hands to make you properly invisible. You stand in the coffee room before the household is fully awake, and the air already feels busy. The marble under your slippers is cool enough to keep you alert. Rosewater lingers from the last washing of the counters. A thinner line of oud smoke drifts in from the hall and settles under the lamps. You hear the courtyard fountains before you hear any voice. Their low rush fills every pause and softens every sound. In this palace, even silence comes with a soundtrack. The brass coffee pans wait in a row beside the brazier. Their long handles point outward like careful fingers. The charcoal glows red under a skin of pale ash. You lift a lid and check the beans kept for this morning. They are dark, glossy, and dry. When you press one between your nails, it gives a clean little crack. Coffee in the inner palace is never treated like a quick drink. It is a task with manners attached. It asks for patience in the same way marble asks for polish. You tip a measured handful into the small roasting pan. The beans click against the metal like hard seeds. Then the smell begins to rise, bitter first and then warm. The room changes as the beans heat. The scent grows rounder and deeper. It settles into your clothes and hair, which means you will smell faintly competent all morning. You keep the pan moving with small circles of your wrist. If you stop, one side darkens too fast. If you hurry, the scent turns sharp, and that never pleases anyone important. No one in Topkapi wants hurried coffee. The palace can manage fleets of servants, stores of silk, and endless trays of fruit. Yet one rushed cup can still feel like a social collapse. You pour the roasted beans into the brass mortar. The sound rings out soft and heavy. You take the pestle in both hands and begin the steady work. The rhythm matters almost as much as the powder. Lift, press, turn. Lift, press, turn. You do not pound as if you are angry with the beans. The finest coffee feels like brown dust between your fingers. A rough grind floats badly and sinks badly. The perfect grind behaves as if it has learned court manners. You pinch a little and rub it with your thumb. It coats the skin in a silky film. That is how you know the cup will sit smooth on the tongue. The lamps throw warm gold over the hand-painted Iznik tiles by the hearth. Blue leaves curl around red flowers on the wall. They look fresh enough to smell, though they never do. Behind you, someone places folded napkins on the work table. You do not turn right away. You know the sound of linen laid down with extra care. Fatima Hatun stands close enough to be useful and far enough to deny intent. Her smile is mild and complete. Her eyes take stock of the beans, the napkins, and your breathing. You incline your head by the smallest degree. She returns the courtesy as if she invented it. 3 years of this have made both of you smooth as polished wood. She says nothing, because you both know better inside these rooms. Still, her silence has shape. It says she notices the exact height of your grounds in each spoon. You reach for the sugar box and lift the lid. Fine crystals sit in a white drift inside. Some ladies want sweetness folded in at the pan. Some want it served beside the cup. That choice depends on rank, habit, mood, and old preference. In the imperial household, memory is part of the furniture. If you forget one person's cup, the walls seem to remember for you. You fill the little pans with water from a covered jug. The water is cool and still. Each measure goes just below the narrow waist of the metal. Then you add the coffee in exact spoonfuls. The powder darkens the water at once. It floats for a moment like silk dye, then sinks into a black cloud. For one pan, you add sugar before the heat. For another, you leave the surface plain and dark. For a third, you add only the smallest pinch, because yesterday's sweetness was judged excessive. You set the pans near the edge of the charcoal and wait. This is the heart of the work. You watch for the thin ring of tiny bubbles before the foam begins to rise. Coffee does not like panic. Coffee notices impatience. Coffee is a little like Bash Kalfa Zeynep in that way, though coffee is less likely to tap a cane. As if summoned by your thought, the cane sounds once on the marbled outside. The single tap passes through the doorway like a reminder from the universe. She exists, and therefore you sit straighter. Bash Kalfa Zeynep enters without haste. Her rosewood comb touches the floor as lightly as a spoon. Her raised eyebrow scans the room and finishes a full disciplinary hearing in a single glance. You lower your eyes and continue working. This is essentially being permanently on mute. In a meeting you have no mechanism to leave. The palace excels at this arrangement. She pauses beside the brazier and studies the pans. You can feel her approval only because it is not disapproval. In her language, that counts as a warm embrace. One pan swells with foam at the rim. You lift it before it spills. The foam sinks back obediently, and you return it to the heat for the second rise. That second rise is fuller and finer. It looks like dark velvet turned to air. A good foam sits on the cup like a neat cap, and promises the rest will be right. You divide the first rise carefully between cups. Each little cup receives its share, then goes back to wait for the final pour. The service is slow because haste ruins the top and the bottom together. The cups themselves wait on a tray lined with folded cloth. Some are white porcelain with small painted sprays. Some sit inside gold holders that keep fingers from the heat and show rank without saying a word. You polish one rim with a square of linen. The cup catches the lamp and glows honey pale. A tiny flaw in the glaze feels larger here than a cracked step outside. Inside the women's quarters, objects have jobs and memories. A cup used for a senior lady should not wander to a junior hand. Even trays have reputations, which is more than some men outside the gate can claim. You arrange the cups in their proper places. The highest ranked position sits nearest your right hand. The next rests slightly back, then another, until the pattern feels fixed as prayer. The order matters before the coffee is even poured. It matters in the cloth beneath the cups. It matters in the sweets that may follow, and in which spoon touches which saucer. You know the morning order better than your own reflection. First the Valid Sultan if she calls, then the chief favorite if she is in residence, then the princesses, the senior ladies, and only afterward the attendants. No one explains this each morning. No one needs to. Precedence lives in the body here, tucked into the wrist and shoulder, like old stitching. You lift each cup once, just to feel its weight. A heavier gold holder changes the balance. A thinner porcelain lip cools faster, and chips faster, which somehow also seems political. One small dish of rose jam goes beside the first cup. Another dish holds candied citron peel cut into pale strips. On a third tray, almond sweets wait under a light cloth. Coffee often arrives with water first, so the mouth starts clean. That too follows rank and habit. One lady likes 2 sips only, while another stares at a full cup of water as if it has personally offended her. You prepare those waters in small covered beakers. Their glass walls bead faintly in the cool room. One receives a floating petal because that is expected now, and expectations grow roots quickly in palaces. Bash Kalfa Zeynep taps her cane once more. Then she points with 2 fingers at the first tray. Her meaning is clear enough to be carved in stone. The first tray is for the highest room this morning. The cloth must fall straight on all 4 sides. The cups must face evenly, though a cup does not technically have a face. You smooth the embroidered cloth with both palms. Silver thread catches against your skin. The border lies flat at last, except for one stubborn corner that behaves like a court roomer. Fatima steps near and lifts the corner without looking at you. She settles it with a perfect pinch. Her kindness arrives polished and leaves an aftertaste. You accept the help because refusing help can look like pride. In these rooms, even gratitude has a correct size. Too little is rude, and too much looks theatrical. The coffee reaches its final rise. You pour in a thin, steady line. The grounds swirl and settle, and the foam gathers at the top in a dark ring. The smell now is full and deep enough to seem almost soft. It sits over the room like a warm shawl. Even the marble feels less stern under that scent. You wipe the lip of each pan before setting it down. One drip on the tray can become a trail. One trail can become a stain. One stain can become the reason somebody remembers you for the wrong century. Topkapi is the most aggressively gated community you can imagine. The views are excellent, the amenities are unmatched, and leaving a negative review is not a practical option. You set each cup onto the tray with small gaps between them. The handles of the holders all angle alike. A folded napkin waits near the front for the receiving hand. Then you check the order again, though you already know it. Your eyes move from right to left and back. Correct order feels calm in the chest, while wrong order feels cold behind the ears. The second tray is lighter but no less dangerous. It holds 3 cups for ladies who notice everything and mention nothing. That is often worse. A third tray waits for attendants of rank enough to receive coffee before the rest. Their cups are simpler, though still fine. Simpler in the palace often only means less gold. No one here rushes coffee, because coffee makes rank visible. It turns invisible lines into objects you can spill. This is why hands grow steady or careers grow short. You inhale once and lift the first tray. Your left hand bears the weight from beneath. Your right hand hovers near the edge, ready for the smallest correction. The metal is warm through the cloth. The cups give off little breaths of steam. You feel the liquid shift when you take the first step. The corridor outside is long, cool, and striped with lamplight. Isnik tiles rise to your shoulder in blue and green bands. Above them, plain plaster keeps its own quiet counsel. A fountain murmurs somewhere beyond the inner court. The sound follows you around corners and through door curtains. It makes each careful step feel part of a larger rhythm. You walk with the tray close to your center. That keeps the cups from trembling too much. It also spares you from the temptation to glance down every second. The thresholds are the true test. Some are raised just enough to catch a slipper. Some doorways sit low enough to punish pride in the forehead. You know them all by body memory. At the third turn, you shorten your step. At the blue alcove, you shift the tray an inch left to clear the carved screen. Passing through the inner corridors is a dance taught by bruiseless correction. You angle your shoulder at one curtain. You dip your head under one lintel. You keep your elbows tucked as if they are privately embarrassed. A tray seems large only when the walls become narrow. Then every handle grows an opinion. Every cup starts thinking about gravity in a very personal way. You reach the first low doorway and bend from the knees, not the waist. The cups tilt but do not complain. The foam trembles and holds. The cloth beneath the cups has been folded twice in the center. That tiny pad keeps the tray level in your palm. It also saves your wrist from mutiny before noon. Ahead, two younger attendants flatten themselves against the tiled wall to let you pass. Their eyes drop to the tray. Respect for hot coffee and high rank looks exactly the same from the outside. You pass a carved wooden screen where light breaks into patterns on the floor. The gold lamps turn the wood honey brown. Dust moves in those bars of light like lazy secrets. At the next turn, the corridor narrows near a shallow niche. A blue glass lamp hangs there and breathes a faint oil smell. You angle the tray to avoid brushing its chain. The narrowest point comes near the favorite's apartments. The wall pushes in on one side, and a chest pushes out on the other. Whoever placed the chest clearly never carried coffee. You slow another degree and slide through. Your slippers whisper on the marble. The cups answer with a tiny chime against their holders. There is a strange peace in this exact kind of attention. Your whole world becomes heat, weight, balance, and the next 4 steps. It is almost restful if your wrist overlooks the facts. The palace likes this sort of quiet skill. It prefers competence that leaves no splash and no story. If anyone praises you, it is usually because nothing memorable has happened. That is why Mehmet the water-bearer remains so memorable. His copper ewer appears ahead of you near the corner, and so does the dark line of a possible puddle. He has arrived very early, which feels unwise on principle. He stands with the long-necked ewer tucked against his hip. The ewer already glistens near the spout in a suspicious way. Mehmet looks down at the floor with sincere wonder. Then he looks at the ewer. Then he looks at the floor again as if one of them must confess. You stop a safe distance away and wait. Since you are sworn to discretion, you do not sigh. Your silence, however, contains a full sermon. He spots you and flattens himself against the wall with hurried courtesy. The copper ewer tilts as he moves. A bright bead forms at the lip and hangs there with dreadful confidence. For one long breath, the drop does not fall. It gathers itself like a thought. Then it lets go and lands exactly where your next step would have been. Mehmet blinks at it, baffled as ever. It remains unclear whether the ewer leaks on its own or only in companionship with him. Scholars may debate this for centuries. You shift your path by the width of 2 fingers and glide past the danger. The tray stays level. The coffee does not punish you for Mehmet's private weather system. Behind you, his sandals scuff as he tries to mop the drip with the edge of his sleeve. This only spreads the shine wider. His talent keeps developing in the wrong direction. The corridor turns again, and you feel the first faint ache in your palm. You flex your fingers under the tray without changing its height. A low doorway waits ahead like an exam you did not request. You lower your head and pass through. The silver on the cloth catches the lamp again. Then the way opens into a short vestibule with a painted ceiling and one impossible obstruction. Pamuk lies exactly across the doorway to the receiving room. He has chosen the center with mathematical precision. His white fur spills over the threshold like expensive cloud. He is enormous in the way only pampered cats and royal expectations become enormous. One paw extends forward in a gesture of ownership. His tail rests over the very line your slipper must cross. You stop at once, because everyone with sense stops for Pamuk. Complaining about him is not an available option. It ranks somewhere below treason and above impolite coughing. He opens one eye the color of pale amber. The eye regards you, the tray, and the laws of nature. Then it closes again because the laws of nature are clearly sufficient. The cup steams softly in front of you. The coffee will not improve by waiting too long, yet neither will your future improve by nudging the favorite's enormous cat with your foot. This is the part nobody mentions when they praise palace grace. Grace often means standing motionless before a sleeping animal, while hot coffee perfumes your face and tests your arm. You look for another path, but the doorway is the only proper approach. Curtains hang on both sides. The screen behind you leaves no room to turn. Pamuk's whiskers twitch once. One ear folds backward and returns. This is not movement in any useful sense, but it does confirm that he is alive and choosing this. You shift the tray slightly to your right and wait. Your wrist begins a private conversation with your shoulder. Your shoulder refers the matter upward to your neck. Inside the room, you hear the soft rustle of silk and the tap of a spoon on a saucer. Service should already be entering. Pamuk continues his independent policy of total occupation. You clear your throat without sound, which is a skill the palace teaches faster than reading. The cat remains devoted to stillness. If stillness were a court office, he would hold it for life. A junior attendant appears beyond the curtain and sees the situation at once. Her face becomes carefully blank. Then she disappears again because no one wants to be present when a cat outranks procedure. You continue waiting. The coffee stays warm. The foam settles a little, which troubles you more than the cat's tyranny, though the cat is undeniably personal. At last, the familiar tap of rosewood reaches you from the corridor behind. One tap, then another, a little sharper. Bash Kalfa Zeynep has arrived, and apparently disaster has clocked in. She takes in the scene without changing expression. Her eyebrow rises exactly one measured notch. You have seen less judgment in official seals. For a moment, even Pamuk opens both eyes. He recognizes authority in the abstract, though perhaps not enough to alter his schedule. His tail gives a slow, luxurious flick. Bash Kalfa Zeynep lowers her cane and touches the silver knob gently to the marble just before his paw. She does not poke. She does not threaten. She merely informs the universe that she has noticed it. Pamuk considers this communication with grave seriousness. Then he lifts his head, blinks twice, and stands up in a long white stretch. He seems mildly surprised that the floor beneath him has failed to become permanent property. He takes 3 slow steps into the room. Then he sits again in a better patch of warmth. Naturally, his new place is on a folded shawl no one can remove from under him. You move through the doorway at once, because victory with a cat lasts only seconds. Your tray clears the threshold without a single clink. Behind you, Bash Kalfa Zeynep gives one satisfied tap and vanishes like a corrective spirit. The receiving room glows with softened lamplight and morning hush. Cushions line the walls in deep reds and faded blue. A brazier perfumes the air with a sweeter smoke than the corridors. You kneel just enough to offer the tray at the correct height, not too low, which looks clumsy, not too high, which looks proud. The palace measures everything in finger widths and feelings. The first cup goes first for a reason older than your service. The second follows after the first is accepted. The third waits until the hand above it has withdrawn. You do not pass across one person's line to reach another. You turn the tray the correct way instead. Rank should never have to lean. A ringed hand lifts the highest cup. The gold holder flashes warm in the lamplight. A breath of coffee rises as the cup leaves its place, and you feel the tray grow lighter by a very small mercy. The next cup leaves after a pause that seems longer than it is. That pause confirms order more clearly than speech. In these rooms, sequence itself is a kind of language. A small beaker of water goes forward, then the dish of rose jam follows. The spoon rests with its handle turned toward the receiving hand, because spoons also have etiquette here. You withdraw 3 steps and remain ready. Someone may ask for more hot water. Someone may decide the sugar balance is inspired. Someone may simply want another napkin, because mornings are changeable. No one speaks above a soft tone. Silk shifts, porcelain touches saucer. Somewhere under a low table, Pamuk begins to wash one paw with complete innocence. When the first tray is empty, you lift it again. It feels surprisingly large without the cups. Emptiness can weigh almost as much as fear if you are not careful. You back out through the doorway and collect the second tray from the waiting hand beyond the curtain. The exchange happens in one smooth moment. This is why palace work looks effortless to anyone not doing it. The second service goes to a smaller room down the side passage. The ladies there are less exalted but far from harmless. They can identify a substituted sweet from across a carpet. You carry the tray lower now that your wrist has learned a morning's opinion. The cups on this tray are painted with tiny red tulips. Each tulip has a gold edge so thin it looks breathed on. At the first corner, Fatima appears from a side door with a folded towel on her arm. She steps aside with perfect timing. Her smile suggests she has witnessed everything and will store it like winter fruit. You pass her with your face composed and your steps even. She need not know how long Pamuk held the doorway. She almost certainly already knows. The second room receives coffee in a different mood. Here, one lady wants her cup before her water. Another prefers the saucer turned slightly. A third always waits until the others have lifted their cups. You remember each preference because forgetting them is a slow kind of drowning. Memory keeps you afloat in these halls. It also means your dreams sometimes include trays arranged by rank. As the cups leave the tray, the room fills with that same dark, warm smell. It mingles with amber perfume and clean linen. The whole morning seems to settle into place. One lady stirs exactly twice, though the sugar is already dissolved. She likes the sound more than the effect. Another cradles the holder in both hands as if warming a bird. A younger attendant reaches for the jam dish, then corrects herself and takes the water first. You approve silently, which is the only approved kind. When you return to the corridor, Mehmet has somehow advanced farther inside with the same ewer and the same expression. The polished copper catches the lamps beautifully. It would make a better decoration than a tool. He stands near a fountain niche, trying to refill a basin without appearing to refill it. This requires more angle than he possesses. A new wet crescent gleams beside his sandal. You halt before the shine and adjust your path once more. At this point, avoiding Mehmet is part of your tray choreography. You suspect the architects did not plan for that, though perhaps they should have. He mouths an apology too late to be useful. The ewer answers with another drop. It falls with the calm certainty of a palace decree. You pass and keep going, because the cups for the next room will not deliver themselves. If they did, the palace would still find someone to supervise them. The third tray waits on a side table, where the lamplight is dimmer. These cups are plain white with narrow blue bands. They are for senior attendants who serve rank above their own and receive coffee after. You refill the pans in the coffee room, while the embers still hold steady. Fresh water, fresh grounds, fresh attention. The ritual begins again, because rituals are simply chores dressed in their best cloth. The second brewing feels quieter. The first urgency of morning has passed. Now the room settles into the steady pace of work done well and repeated often. You scrape a few stray grounds from the work table into your palm and discard them. They leave a dark crescent on your skin. When you wash later, the smell will cling on a little longer. One pan rises faster than expected, and you lift it cleanly. The foam domes and holds. You let yourself feel a small private satisfaction that would look ridiculous from the outside. Fatima takes the empty cups to be rinsed and dried. She stacks them with elegant care. You notice she leaves the finest cloth for the cups that matter most, which is either thoughtful or strategic. Probably both. A younger girl brings fresh napkins, still warm from pressing. You fold them into neat rectangles and place one beside each cup. Warm linen under your fingers feels strangely luxurious for something destined to catch drips. Outside, the fountains continue their low murmur. A gull cries beyond the walls toward the Bosphorus. The sound reaches faintly through stone and screens, reminding you that a larger city is having its own morning. Inside, the palace remains its own world. It is a world of corridors, trays, folded cloth, guarded doors, and very informed cats. You could live a week here and measure it by sense alone. The third service is simpler, though no less exact. Senior attendants receive after the ladies, in an order that mirrors service and favor. Even modest cups can carry a whole ladder inside them. One attendant receives hers with both hands and a small nod. Another waits for the highest among them to sip first. Their faces remain calm, but you see attention sharpen around the edges. The Kaftan hierarchy of the household behaves like influencer culture before anyone knows that phrase. The right robe from the right patron can turn an ordinary week into a new future. Coffee, too, can hint at favor. A cup delivered a moment earlier can be noticed. A sweeter brew can be remembered. People say palaces run on power, but they also run on tiny timings. You carry the last cup to a window alcove where an older attendant rests between duties. Light from the lattice patterns her sleeve. She thanks you with a glance that is almost maternal, and therefore dangerous to your composure. The cup settles into her hand, and your tray empties at last. The weight lifts from your palm with a nearly holy relief. Your fingers uncurl one by one, as if waking from a cramped dream. You return through the marble corridor at a slower pace now. The lamps still cast warm gold across the blue tiles. A thread of oud smoke drifts along the ceiling and thins near the vents. Mehmet is kneeling beside his copper ewer with a cloth, confronting a puddle that has somehow become a small district. He looks up at you with tragic sincerity. The ewer leans beside him, gleaming and unrepentant. You step around both man and puddle with the tenderness due to unpredictable weather. He bows from the knees and nearly nudges the ewer again. You continue on before history can repeat itself in front of you. Back in the coffee room, the work table shows the gentle aftermath of service. Empty cups wait for washing. A few sugar crystals sparkle near the box. The charcoal settles lower with soft little sighs. You rinse the pans before any grounds can harden. Warm water loosens the dark film at once. You wipe each handle dry, so no spot will dull the metal later. The washed cups line up on folded cloth like tiny white boats. You turn them carefully to drain. One last curl of steam escapes from a cup and fades into the room. When you lift the sugar lid again, the scent of coffee still clings to its wood. The room now smells of wet brass, embers, and the sweet ghost of the brew. It is a kind smell, though slightly strict. Bash Kalfa Zeynep appears one final time in the doorway. She says nothing. Her cane taps once, and her eyebrow remains in a neutral position, which for her passes as festive. You lower your head in acknowledgement. She surveys the clean pans, the dried tray cloths, and the absence of disaster. Then she leaves as abruptly as she arrives, taking judgment with her for the moment. That single tap stays with you longer than a speech would. In this palace, approval is never lavish. It comes in tiny portions, like the best jam. You fold the service cloths into exact squares and stack them by size. The silver thread at their edges catches against your thumb. One cloth still carries a single white hair from Pamuk, because of course it does. You lift the hair away and set it aside. Complaints about the highest-ranking obstacle in the palace remain unavailable. He sheds where he governs. At last you wash your hands in rose water and plain water together. The coolness wakes the skin. The scent softens the bitter trace of the grounds without hiding it completely. Your wrists bear faint red marks where the tray pressed down. They will fade by noon. Tomorrow they will return, as faithful as the fountains and considerably less musical. You stand for one quiet moment before the embers. The room has gone still, except for a distant step in the corridor. The morning's careful trouble has already begun turning into routine. That is the secret shape of this life. You move through beautiful rooms with hot cups and shut mouths. You carry comfort from hand to hand and leave almost no mark behind. Yet the palace keeps your work in small ways. In a polished cup, in a remembered order, in a cat persuaded from a doorway at exactly the right moment. Soon another tray will need lining. Another cup will need warming. Another corridor will wait with its thresholds and curtains, and perhaps Mehmet will be there, menaced by his own ewer again. For now, though, the coffee is served, the cups are clean, and the morning has not been rushed. In Topkapi, that is nearly the same thing as triumph. The marble under your slippers feels colder in this corridor than in any other part of the palace. Here the air stays cool even at noon. Rosewater hangs in it like a thin veil. Oud smoke drifts from a brazier farther down the turn. The fountain in the next courtyard gives its small, endless murmur. You move with your tray close to your body. You keep your elbows in. You keep the cups from touching. Even porcelain seems to understand where it is. It stays still in the woven cloth ring. This is the corridor where no voice is supposed to travel. You learn that silence here is not one rule, it is a whole craft. It lives in slippers with soft soles. It lives in hinges rubbed with oil. It lives in servants who close a door with their palm before the latch clicks. Even the lamps are kept kind. Their glass chimneys are cleaned before soot can make anyone cough. Their little metal tools are wrapped in cloth. The cloth keeps them from tapping against the tray. You swallow carefully when you pass a sleeping chamber. You discover very quickly that sounds have ranks. Fountains may murmur, doves may complain in the eaves, silk may rustle when a lady turns on her cushion, bracelets may breathe against one another once, voices may not. A sneeze here feels like a public scandal. A dropped spoon feels like an empire-sized event. Your own heartbeat sometimes seems loud enough to earn official notice. Topkapi is the most aggressively gated community imaginable, and apparently even sound requires permission to enter. Bash Kalfa Zeynep does not need words to make this clear. She taps her rosewood cane once on the marble as you pass. One tap means she is reminding you she exists. You never need that reminder, but she gives it faithfully. It is one of her many gifts. The tap moves through the corridor with more force than a speech. You lower your head by exactly the needed amount. Not too much, not too little. The proper angle has the precision of measuring saffron. You learn the angle before you learn peace. At first you think silence means emptiness. Then you notice how full it is. You hear the brush of a sleeve lining. You hear the tiny wet kiss of a lamp wick being trimmed. You hear sesame seeds roll in a kitchen bowl 3 rooms away. You hear Mehmet the water bearer before you see him. There is always a faint slosh, then a pause, then the heartbreaking discovery of a fresh puddle. Mehmet stands over it with his copper ewer and his same sincere confusion. It remains uncertain whether the ewer leaks alone or only in loyal partnership with Mehmet. You step around the shining trail without changing your face. No one speaks to point at it. No one sighs. A boy comes with a rag. Mehmet lifts the ewer as if innocence might drip from it. The palace absorbs the whole scene in perfect quiet, like a household that has seen this play before. You begin to understand how silence is maintained practically, not magically. Trays are lined with felt under the dishes. Door rings are gripped with cloth. Laundry baskets are set down on folded blankets. A lid is never allowed to meet its pot like an old friend. It is guided down slowly by 2 careful fingers. Even shoes have different duties. Outdoor clogs stop before the inner threshold. Soft indoor slippers take over. Their soles are brushed clean each morning. A grain of grit underfoot can scratch marble, and a scratch can sing. The women of the inner household have their own sounds, but they are gentle ones. A comb passes through hair with a faint dry music. A prayer bead slips across a thumb. Scissors cut thread near a window. Someone stirs honey into hot milk, and the spoon circles the cup without touching its sides. You do not speak unless speech is asked for. When speech is asked for, it comes in the smallest amount. A yes, a ready, a now. The words sit low in the throat. They do not wander. They arrive, do their work, and leave. Mostly you move through a meeting where everyone is permanently on mute, and no one can ever claim they forgot. The strange comfort of this comes slowly. You stop needing to fill the air. Your thoughts grow tidier because they have nowhere to spill. A whole day can pass with only a handful of words, and none of them wasted. Your body starts learning before your mind does. Your hand steadies a latch by itself. Your steps shorten when the tiles change underfoot. Your breath softens near curtained alcoves. You become aware of your own bracelets, your own keys, your own sleeves, as if each one has secret plans to betray you. The keys are tied in cloth at your waist. The cloth keeps them from chiming. It also keeps them from biting your hip. Practical kindness is everywhere in the palace, though it often arrives disguised as strictness. Zainab notices when you forget and reach too quickly for a door. 2 taps of the cane land behind you. 2 taps mean imminent disaster. This disaster turns out to be your hand on a bronze latch without a cloth between. You withdraw it at once. Zainab lifts one eyebrow, which somehow contains a full disciplinary hearing, 3 witnesses, and final judgment. You feel corrected all the way to your slippers. She says nothing. She does not need to. She places the folded cloth in your hand with grave ceremony. Her silence carries a lesson more durable than any lecture. You never touch a latch barehanded again. The corridor teaches you to make yourself smaller without feeling lesser. You turn sideways to pass a maid carrying folded quilts. You hold your tray higher when a nurse moves by with a sleeping child. You pause in the shadow of an arch and let an older Kalfa cross first. The order is quiet, but it is everywhere. Soon you see that the silence itself has a shape. It bends around rank. It widens around rest. It settles heavily around grief and lightly around embroidery. It thins near the laundry rooms, where steam softens everyone. It grows most exact in the private corridors where the women closest to the sultan keep their hours. There the marble gleams like still water. Oil lamps throw warm gold over hand-painted Iznik tiles. Blue vines curl around red tulips and cypress shapes. You know these walls well now. You could walk them half asleep, which is useful, because at times you already are. Every palace has its own weather. Here it is warm lamplight, cool stone, and the low hush of fountains. The rules of silence make room for another language. At first you only catch pieces of it. A hand waits in the air. A chin dips toward a side table. 2 fingers touch the wrist. Eyes flick once to a lamp and away. Somehow, a full instruction has passed between attendants, without even brushing a word. You start copying what you see. An open palm held low means stop where you are. A curled finger means come closer but quietly. 2 taps against your own forearm mean hot dish. A thumb toward the door means remove this before it becomes a problem. It is a neat little universe of need. Some signs are so ordinary that you almost miss them. A tray tilted slightly means there is not enough room ahead. A folded napkin over the left hand means sweet drink, not soup. A head lowered and held for 1 extra breath means someone inside is resting. You receive the message and alter course before your mind names it. You become fluent in eyebrows by necessity. A glance up at a shelf means the rosewater flask is empty. A look at the floor by the brazier means ashes need clearing. A tiny pinch of the fingers asks for thread. A wider pinch asks for thicker thread, because of course the palace needs silent distinctions in thread. There is something gently funny in how much can be said with almost nothing. You and the other Kalfas build whole little bridges out of gestures. You ask for towels, combs, sugar, sandalwood, and warmed slippers with your hands alone. You warn each other about damp floors and sleeping infants, and one ambitious draft from the Bosphorus. One motion becomes your favorite. You touch 2 fingers lightly to your collarbone, then point to the tray. It means this goes to the inner room first. It feels elegant and efficient. It also feels slightly smug, which is dangerous, because smugness attracts Zainab, the way lamplight attracts moths. Sure enough, she materializes from an impossible corner. Her cane taps once. You smooth your face at once. She studies your hand, as if she can detect vanity in the knuckles. Then she repeats the gesture more precisely than you did. It is not a rebuke exactly. It is a reminder that even your silent grammar can be improved. Bashkalfa Zainab is your HR manager, building superintendent, and disapproving grandmother condensed into one immovable woman with a cane. Still, the sign system saves time and saves dignity. No one has to call out across a room. No one disturbs a rest because the sugar bowl has gone missing. No one announces that Pamuk is sitting in the doorway again like a cloud with opinions. Pamuk communicates in his own sovereign method. He sprawls exactly where a tray must pass. He narrows his eyes as if you are the unreasonable party. He has sat on folded laundry, on account books, and once on a letter that looked very official and became instantly less so. Complaining about Pamuk is not one of the options available to you. So there is a gesture for that too. You spread your hands slightly, then tilt your head toward the floor with weary acceptance. It means the cat is involved. The other attendants understand at once. Their faces do not change, but their souls briefly nod. The best signs are the ones no outsider would notice. A finger drawn down your sleeve means mend this seam later. A hand hovering over the heart means a lady wants quiet company, not service. A nail touched to the lip means there is perfume on the room air already, and you should not bring more. Simple things save whole afternoons. The kitchen girls have their own variations. The bath women have another set. The older seamstresses seem able to discuss an entire hem with one glance and half a shrug. You never stop learning new signs. The palace keeps making them where speech would snag. You practice them in your mind while polishing a brass tray. You rehearse the sign for fresh coals. You rehearse the one for physician. You rehearse the one for not now. You rehearse the smallest possible apology, which is useful because palace life produces tiny offenses the way mulberry trees produce leaves. Soon your hands know what to do before thought arrives. A boy stumbles with folded towels, and your palm rises to steady him. A nurse needs warm water, and your fingers already ask the nearest maid. You feel yourself join the hidden current of the household. It flows under the visible one, quiet and exact. There is pride in that, though you keep it tucked away. Pride here is like perfume. Too much announces itself before you do. Just enough stays close and warms you. By afternoon, the corridors deepen into a softer gold. Lamp flame glows in niches. The blue tiles darken and grow richer. The marble keeps its cool under your soles. The fountains outside continue their patient speaking, which is useful because they cover little accidents and tiny human failures. Such is the moment when one chamber door stands just slightly unlatched. You see it first by the thin line of warm light on the floor. A door should either rest open with intent or closed with care. This door does neither. It sits not quite right in its frame. The latch has not fully met. A gap no wider than a finger lets the lamplight through. You carry a tray with pear slices, almond sweets, and a small cup of syrup darkened with cloves. The silver spoon lies against the saucer in its cloth ring. The napkin is folded square. Your fingers smell faintly of rose water from the ewer you filled before leaving the service room. Everything in your hand says ordinary duty. The door says something else. You do not stop. Stopping would be its own form of listening. You know that much already. You keep the same measured pace. You let your eyes remain on the stretch of tile ahead. Where one blue flower has a chipped petal you always notice. Then a voice reaches the corridor through the narrow gap. It is not loud. It is not meant for you. It arrives soft and clear anyway, as private things often do when least wanted. You hear one woman ask whether the green bursa silk looks too rich for a Thursday. You hear another say it does not, if the pearls stay small. You also hear a name. That is the dangerous part. It is only a name attached to a gift and a visit, and a matter of who should receive which tray first. Yet the name belongs higher up the careful ladder of the household than your memory should dare climb. It lands in your ear like a coal spark. You keep walking. Your face does not move. Your tray does not tremble. Your left thumb stays under the rim exactly where it belongs. Inside, however, your mind starts behaving like Mehmet's ewer, leaking alarm in little bright drops everywhere. The voices continue for another few breaths. One speaks of a robe lining that scratches at the neck. One speaks of the jeweler who sets stones too tightly. Then there is a softer remark about a letter that must be answered with tact and delay. You are already beyond the doorway when that last phrase reaches you. It is enough. It is too much. It is nothing you were meant to have. At the next corner, the fountain sound covers you again. You feel grateful to the water. You feel grateful to the marble. You feel grateful to the tray, because it gives your hands honest work. Pear slices may not save lives, but at the moment they save your expression. You deliver the tray exactly where it belongs. You set it down on the low table without sound. You adjust the napkin so the corner points neatly toward the guest cushion. You bow. You back away. Your body performs every usual step, while your mind stands in the corridor staring at a door it must forget. It is not the first thing you have overheard. It is only the first thing you understand matters. You catch harmless pieces of palace weather. Someone wants apricot jam instead of quince. Someone says the bath is too hot. Someone complains that Pamuk has chosen a folded shawl as his throne again, which is less a complaint than a weather report. Those pass through you easily. A name does not pass so easily. Neither does the tone of careful concern that wraps around it. You do not know the whole matter, which is good. In palaces, half a detail is already too much detail. Still, the mind loves to polish what it should leave dull. You spend the next hour fighting that urge. As you refill a basin, you repeat practical things to yourself. 3 towels in the warming chest, 2 lamp wicks on the tray, 1 cracked bowl in the laundry room. The inventory pushes against the overheard words and slowly takes up space. When you fold napkins, you count corners. When you sort combs, you count teeth. When you lift the lid from the lentil pot, you name the smell of cumin and mint. You make your mind busy with small, true things. It is not noble, but it is effective. The palace teaches you that forgetting is active work. No one says this plainly because plain speech would be too easy. Instead, you see it in the older attendants. They hear a remark through a curtain, then somehow their faces remain as blank and useful as folded linen. By supper, even their eyebrows have forgotten. You begin to study that skill with care. There are methods for it. One method is to pin the memory to an object, then put the object away. You tell yourself you heard only a brass latch fail to catch properly, not words, not a name, only a latch and a stripe of light on tile. Another method is to blur details with routine. You remember the tray carried pear slices, not the room it passed. You remember the clove syrup stained the cup rim slightly. You remember the polished floor near the threshold and the scent of amber perfume in the air. You do not remember who spoke. This discipline feels odd at first. All your life you are told to observe well, remember clearly, and make yourself useful. Here, usefulness sometimes means creating a clean, blank space inside your own head. It is less like lying and more like tucking a dangerous needle safely into cloth. By evening, you find Zeynep in the lamp room. She is trimming wicks with the serene focus of a judge sharpening principles. The little scissors shine in her hand. Oil smells warm and nutty in the room. You hold the refill flask and wait while she sets each glass chimney straight. You cannot explain how. Perhaps your shoulders answer for you. Perhaps the palace itself sends her perhaps her raised eyebrow truly does file formal complaints on its own. Whatever the method, she sees that your mind is carrying something unhelpful. Her cane rests against the wall. Mercifully, it remains still. She says only 3 words very low. Remember what matters. That is all. Yet the meaning arrives complete. Remember the tray. Remember the clock of the lamps. Remember who needs honey and tea and who prefers it plain. Remember which chest holds winter shawls. Remember what keeps the household moving gently from hour to hour. Forget what is not yours to keep. You bow and take the wick trimmings to the ash bowl. They smell faintly bitter. The bowl is blue pottery with a small chip on the rim. You fix your mind on that chip with almost desperate gratitude. It is a safe thing to know. Later, you wash your hands in rose water and cool, clean water. You rub your fingers slowly, though there is no visible dirt on them. The basin holds a few floating petals. Your nails catch the scent. You imagine the overheard words loosening and slipping away with the water, which is a foolish image, but a soothing one. Selective memory has its own rituals, even if no one writes them down. You fold the day before sleep. You smooth it flat. You keep what can be used tomorrow. You put aside what cannot be touched without harm. This is housekeeping of the mind, and the palace appreciates good housekeeping in any room. The next morning tests you almost at once. A younger maid whispers, far too near a doorway, that one room changed its breakfast order unexpectedly. You hear the dangerous thrill in her whisper. She wants a listener more than an answer. You lift one finger, then point to the bread tray. Work first. Talk never if possible. She blushes and nods. You hand her the fresh rounds still wrapped in cloth to keep them warm. The smell of sesame and yeast fills the little passage. By the time she reaches the kitchen turn, the urge to gossip has died a quiet, practical death. You begin to see how silence protects everyone from their own worst impulses. A person with a free tongue will use it. A person with no permitted tongue starts using her hands, and hands usually ask for salt, not scandal. There is a wisdom in that. There is also a certain relief. Of course, silence does not erase curiosity. It simply teaches curiosity to wear slippers. You notice this most in Fatima Hatun. Fatima is never exactly where the useful thing is said. She is always somewhere impossible to blame for hearing it. Her smile remains impeccable. Her memory stretches much farther than that smile politely admits. You first spot her near the linen shelves. She is smoothing a folded stack of muslin with both palms. The work looks innocent enough, yet the shelves stand one turn away from a sitting room where two senior women exchange visitors and favors. Fatima has chosen her folding place with the care of a mapmaker. When a chamber door opens, she does not look up. That is her genius. She can appear deeply devoted to a pillowcase while hearing a whole current of palace weather flow past her left shoulder. She does not lean. She does not pause. She does not even breathe in a suspicious way. If anyone asks, she is with the linen, and the linen will back her story. You respect the skill despite yourself. It is a little like watching a cat pretend it has no interest in the fish. Pamuk, for his part, never bothers pretending. This afternoon, he lies across the sunlit threshold of a side room, all white fur and imperial certainty. Fatima glides around him without one glance downward. You nearly admire that too. The highest-ranking obstacle in the palace receives from her exactly the acknowledgement she gives everyone else, which is almost none. She knows you are watching. You know she knows. Neither of you gives the other any sign. It is a whole conversation made of absence. In a place built on silence, rivalry becomes a kind of polite weather pattern. It drifts. It chills one side of the corridor. It passes. Fatima's art lies not only in hearing but in appearing elsewhere entirely. You watch her carry a tray of sherbet through the outer antechamber. A question passes from one older attendant to another near the window. It concerns a gift list and a delayed reply. Fatima's shoulder turns by half an inch. That is all. She appears to be adjusting the tray cloth. By the time the last word is said, she is 3 steps farther on. If asked, she has been walking the whole time. This is not a lie exactly. It is choreography. Her face never brightens with interest. Her eyes never snag on the speaker. Her pace stays even. She becomes part of the furniture of service, as unremarked as a lampstand or a folded rug. Except lampstands do not later remember who receives which robe. The Kaftan hierarchy has all the soft drama of influencer culture, only with better fabric and much stricter consequences for a bad opinion. You learn from Fatima even while wishing you did not. You learn where not to pause. You learn how to angle your body toward a harmless task. You learn that a servant with a dust cloth may hear everything, because no one believes dust has ambitions. The lesson is useful and slightly annoying, which means it settles deeply. One damp morning gives you a perfect example. Rain has passed over the city at dawn. The courtyard stones still hold a dark sheen. The smell from the gardens comes cool and green through the lattice. Inside, the corridors feel closer, with lamps burning later than usual against the gray. You carry fresh charcoal to a brazier room. The little iron pan warms your hands through the cloth. Ahead of you, a chambermaid adjusts cushions near an open screen. Beyond the screen, voices drift from a private room, low and steady. Nothing in them sounds meant for the hallway. Fatima stands at a side table, counting spoons. She counts very slowly. No one counts spoons that slowly, unless the spoons carry state secrets. Yet there she is, moving one silver spoon beside another, calm as winter. Anyone passing would think the arithmetic is urgent. You think otherwise. You lower your eyes and continue. This is the great game of the inner household. Everyone knows hearing happens. Everyone agrees not to notice when it is well done. The real offense is clumsiness. Palace life forgives many things more easily than obviousness. You place the charcoal pan by the brazier. The maid thanks you with the smallest dip of her fingers. You answer with the sign for more coals later. From behind the screen, one voice mentions a shipment of silk. Another mentions a physician's timing. You hear it. You do not collect it. That distinction becomes the center of your work. Hearing is accidental. Collecting is chosen. Repeating is ruinous. Forgetting is a discipline, and discipline can become comfort. Once you accept that, the corridor stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling precise. You build tiny habits to help yourself. When a stray phrase reaches you, you touch the edge of your tray with your thumb. The touch reminds you of the present task. When a chamber door stands ajar, you look at the floor pattern, not the gap. When voices lower, you slow neither step nor breath. Soon these habits settle into your bones. Your body becomes a trustworthy servant to your better sense. That is a relief. because the palace offers constant chances to do the wrong thing beautifully. Better to do the right thing quietly and go on with your day. There are rewards for this, though they are not announced. A nurse begins handing you the sleeping infants, because your movements are sure. A senior lady asks for you when she wants her shawls aired and refolded exactly. Zeynep leaves you alone with a key basket for half an hour, which in her language counts as lavish praise. Once, she even passes you with no tap at all. You nearly turn to check whether she has been replaced by a kinder ghost. Then at the far arch, the cane taps once. She is reminding you she exists. Naturally, the days acquire a smoothness that feels almost musical. Morning brings folded linens, warmed water, and the first sweep of the corridors. Midday brings trays of soup with mint and rice, little dishes of olives, and rose sherbet beaded with cold from the cellar jars. Evening brings lamps, thicker shawls, and slower footsteps. Silence fits each hour differently. In the morning, it is brisk and tidy. At noon, it grows drowsy under the heat. By evening, it turns soft as brushed wool. At night, it becomes something sacred, though still practical, because someone always needs another blanket. You become fond of the practical sacredness of it all. A cushion plumped quietly is still a kindness. A lamp filled before it sputters is still care. A private word not carried onward is perhaps the kindest service of all. The palace asks for little heroics and endless small good sense. That suits you better than stories do. Stories want names and turning points. Your life in these corridors wants warm trays, clean sleeves, and a face that reveals nothing. It is less dramatic and much more useful. It is also better for the nerves. One late afternoon, the lesson arrives in full. You pass again by a door, not fully latched. Light spills under it in a pale gold line. A voice within laughs softly over some small domestic complaint involving a fur lining and an overfed cat. You recognize the sound of danger in its gentleness. Without breaking step, you raise one finger to the maid behind you. She understands at once. She shifts the dishes on her tray so they do not clink. You angle your own body slightly away from the gap. Together you pass like two shadows carrying soup. The voices remain behind the door where they belong. At the end of the corridor, she gives you the tiniest grateful nod. You answer with the sign for nothing at all. That is the point. Nothing happened. Nothing was heard. Nothing will be remembered except that the souk stayed hot and arrived on time. In the inner household, this is success in its purest form. Fatima appears at the next arch as if conjured by the word success. She holds a folded shawl and wears her flawless mild smile. Her eyes rest on your empty tray for one moment too long. She knows you have passed that corridor. She would like to know more. She receives nothing. You lower your head to the proper angle. She returns the gesture with perfect courtesy. Then she glides away, no doubt to count spoons beside some highly informative curtain. You continue toward the service room with a feeling close to peace. Rivalry is tiresome, but restraint has a pleasant, clean taste. In the service room, the lentil pot sends up steam scented with onion and mint. Bread waits under cloth on a low table. Copper cups dry upside down on a towel. A junior maid is slicing cucumbers into a bowl with yogurt and dill. Ordinary work gathers around you like a blanket. Mehmet appears in the doorway with his ewer. A single drop falls to the floor. He looks at it with such honest confusion that your soul smiles, though your face stays calm. You point to the rag basket with 2 fingers. He nods, as if you have solved a deep mystery of nature. Some things in the palace remain blessedly simple. You rinse your hands and help set the evening trays. The copper lids are warm. The bowls sit in cloth rings. The spoons are laid with their handles aligned. Someone has added a dish of stewed quince with cinnamon to one tray, which improves the whole mood of the room immediately. From the corridor comes the low murmur of the fountains. Beyond that, lamps glow on blue tile. Beyond that, the Bosphorus breathes cool evening air against the city. The palace folds into night with all its guarded comforts intact. You are one small part of that folding. You think of all that travels without words here. Instructions pass by fingers. Warnings pass by eyebrows. Care passes by shawls laid gently over sleeping shoulders. Trust passes in what is not repeated. Even affection finds its way into a cup placed just where a tired hand will reach. This is the corridor's real language. It asks you to become light-footed, sharp-eyed, and kindly blank where needed. It asks you to hold details and release names. It asks you to hear the household without stealing from it. Over time, the asking becomes natural. At last, you no longer fear the silence. You wear it like part of your uniform. It settles over your shoulders with the clean scent of linen and rosewater. It follows you across the marble and under the lamp glow. It turns your hands patient. It turns your memory selective. It makes your service almost invisible, which is exactly the art. And in this palace, invisible work keeps everything shining. The small courtyard opens like a cool cup of air between two guarded walls. You reach it only after 3 doors, 2 nods, and 1 look from a gatekeeper who already knows your name. Your slippers make almost no sound on the worn marble. The stone still holds a little shade from the wall. You never drift into this place by chance. Nothing inside Topkapi happens by drift. Even the breeze seems to have papers in order. The first door belongs to the service passage behind the women's rooms. The second door belongs to a narrow hall lined with blue Iznik tiles. The third door opens only when your hour is written where the right eyes can see it. You carry no grand token for this. You carry a folded strip of linen with a stitch mark from your section. You carry the kind of face that says you are going somewhere aloud. The rule is simple in the palace way. Simple means there are 12 smaller rules resting inside it. You may enter only the courtyards for your rank, your wing, your hour, and your errand. Some attendants may cross only to deliver trays. Some may cross only when following a senior woman. Some may stand in a doorway and look in, which is a form of entry that is somehow not entry at all. You learn these shades early. The palace teaches them faster than any book could. A wrong turn is not a tragedy, but it becomes a story, and stories cling. So you keep the map in your feet. 3 steps from the jasmine pot, left at the cracked paving stone, straight under the arch where the plaster dips like a sleeping eyebrow. Bashkalfa Zeynep does not need to explain any of this twice. She has a rosewood cane and a gift for appearing from flat surfaces. 1 tap means she reminds you she exists, which is never a small thing. 2 taps mean that someone nearby has misunderstood the universe. 3 taps mean the universe has disappointed her personally. Her raised eyebrow handles the rest with the efficiency of an office full of clerks. She is your HR manager, building keeper, and stern grandmother folded into one unmovable woman. The palace runs on many wheels, but her eyebrow is clearly one of the larger ones. Today you receive your hour because the linen chests are counted early. The silver bowls are polished before the heat thickens. The younger girls finish carrying fruit syrups without dropping a single cup. That last part feels almost suspicious. Calm in the palace has a careful face. You accept it with the gratitude of a person who knows it may not last past the next doorway. You pass under the final arch, and the air changes. It smells less of lamp smoke and more of wet stone. A fountain murmurs in the middle, with the patience of a person who has nothing else scheduled. The courtyard is not large. It is only large enough to feel like mercy. 4 cypress trees make a square of shadow around the basin, and the walls rise high enough to slice the sky into a clean blue strip. This is one of the smaller inner courts. It does not lead anywhere useful to men with official business. It leads instead to breathing, to quiet mending, and to the respectful study of one patch of weather. You are allowed here because your work belongs to the imperial women's rooms. You are not allowed in the broader ceremonial courts unless your hands are carrying somebody else's needs. Rank is a staircase in this place, and every stair has a guard. Even among attendants, access is braided tight. The laundresses use 1 yard near the drying lines. The bath women use another by the heated rooms. The senior kalfas may cross spaces that remain only rumors to you. You know their names by sound more than sight. The court of this, the terrace of that, the garden where pomegranates split in the heat. They float through service talk like places in a travel tale, told by people who never travel. Topkapi is the most aggressively dated community in the known world. It offers fine views and excellent fountains. It also maintains a strict policy against leaving a negative review. So this small court feels precious in direct proportion to how ordinary it is. A bench, a basin, a few trees, and a square of light become treasure when permission wraps them in silk. You pause by the wall and let your shoulders settle. The fabric at your neck has been neat since dawn. Your braid has been pinned so firmly that your scalp feels educated. The afternoon leisure period begins only after the trays return and the napkins are counted. It begins only after the sewing basket is put back in order. It begins only when somebody senior decides that comfort may briefly exist. No bell marks it. No cheerful announcement drifts through the halls. Leisure arrives as a loosening in the corridor, and everyone notices without looking like they notice. You see it in the older women first. Their hands stop moving quite so quickly. Their mouths soften from straight duty into something almost human. A headscarf is adjusted with less urgency and more thought. Then the juniors begin to appear in pairs. They carry mending because idleness must still look useful. They carry tiny boxes of thread, a half-finished cuff, or a torn lining that may never have needed repair at all. Your own leisure has a shape so narrow it could fit to a keyhole. You sit if a place appears. You mend if cloth is near. You breathe as if breathing has become an approved domestic skill. No one lies down. No one unlaces both slippers. No one lets her scarf slip low enough to be called ease. Leisure in the inner palace is rest wearing a respectable disguise. You lower yourself onto the edge of the fountain ledge instead of the bench. The stone is cool through the cloth of your robe. The sound of moving water hides small noises, which is part of its genius. A few attendants bring dates wrapped in scraps of clean linen. One shares almond paste the size of a thumbnail. Another rubs rose oil into chapped knuckles and offers the jar around without a word. The hour has its little customs. The youngest sit nearest the wall until invited closer. The older women claim the spots with back support. Everyone keeps one ear turned toward the passage in case the world resumes. You make tiny work for your hands because still hands look suspiciously content. You straighten the seam at your cuff. You pick a loose thread from your hem and wind it around a finger. This is what leisure actually contains. It contains not being summoned for several blessed breaths. It contains hearing water louder than instructions. It also contains watching the light move across the tiles. It contains noticing dust on cypress bark. It contains the wild luxury of tasting a raisin before the next duty appears. When the sun leans west, the wall throws a band of shade across the paving stones. People shift toward it with the slow grace of cats, though one cat in particular has far more ambition than the rest. Pamuk is already on the bench. He has reached the bench before anyone with human obligations arrives. He lies there in a wide white curve, as if he personally ordered the stone carved to his shape. This is the third afternoon in a row. You know because the bench carries a faint pale tuft at one end. You know because the palace has many patterns, and Pamuk forms one of the most reliable. The bench stands beside the fountain where the spray cools the air. It catches the nicest draft from the shaded wall. Pamuk has identified this at once, which is unfair only because he is correct. His fur spills over the edge like fine wool from a merchant's best bale. One paw hangs toward the paving stones. His pink nose rests on the bench as if deep thought has overcome him. No one tells him to move. No one even constructs the sentence silently. Complaining about Pamuk is not an available option in the imperial household, much like changing the weather or correcting a vizier's handwriting. He belongs to the sultan's favorite, which gives him a rank beyond ordinary creaturehood. He has sat on folded letters. He has blocked doorways during processions. He has once considered a tray of sugared plums to be a philosophical challenge. Today he opens one eye at you. The eye says the bench is occupied under ancient law. You take the fountain ledge and accept your place beneath a higher authority wrapped in white fur. A younger attendant glances at the bench and then at you. You both look away with the solemnity of women ignoring a small domestic empire. The fountain covers the sound of one nearly suppressed laugh. Pamuk stretches by the length of a hand. This is not moving. This is merely publishing an updated claim. The leisure hour keeps its own order, even around him. One woman sits on her folded shawl by the wall. Another leans against a cypress trunk and shells pistachios into her palm. You tuck your feet to one side and preserve the dignity of your knees. You can smell warm stone and damp moss from the fountain basin. A ribbon of oud smoke drifts faintly from a nearby room. Someone has spilled rose water earlier, and the sweet scent rises whenever the shade cools the slabs. The court sounds fuller than it looks. Water taps the basin lip, fabric rustles, a bird lands high on the wall and scrapes its claws once before settling. Farther off, beyond 2 passages and at least 1 closed screen, Mehmet the water-bearer performs his usual miracle. You hear a soft metallic clink, then a pause, then the unmistakable patter of a new puddle. You do not need to see him to know the expression on his face. He will be staring at the leaking copper ewer with sincere surprise. The ewer and Mehmet remain one of the palace's longest and most confusing marriages. Someone near you lowers her eyes and murmurs that the floor has found its daily drink. Another woman presses her lips together hard enough to hide a smile. Even in rest, palace humor stays properly dressed. From this court you cannot see Mehmet. You can only hear the consequences of his company. The faint drip becomes a steady counterpoint to the fountain until somebody important passes near him and fate changes course. You sit very still and let the sounds sort themselves. The fountains inside Topkapi always seem to know more than the people do. They murmur all day and never repeat anything useful. That is one reason this court matters. Here you may almost speak freely. The water takes the edges off quiet voices and carries them into harmless blur. Almost is the key word. You remain a sworn woman of the inner household. Your work rests on discretion so complete it begins to feel like another layer of clothing. So, the murmurs in this court move in careful circles. Nobody names what should stay unnamed. Nobody repeats a private grief or a private favor. The palace floats on silence, and you help keep it buoyant. Still, there are things you may say with care. You may ask whose needle is finer. You may wonder whether the apricots this year taste watery. You may compare the linen from one storeroom with linen from another, and make this sound like philosophy. Today, the first murmur starts with feet. It often does. One woman says the paving stones of the North Hall bruise her heels through both soles. Another replies that the tiles near the bathrooms are worse because they stay treacherously polished. You add that the stair to the upper gallery is not a stair at all. It is a test designed by someone who dislikes ankles. 3 women breathe agreement into the water's soft noise. Then the talk shifts to thread. A senior Kalfa says the green silk from the last bundle knots if you look at it sharply. A younger one whispers that perhaps it learned manners from Fatima Hatun. That earns a hidden smile from you before you can help it. Fatima sits 2 arm lengths away with a piece of white linen spread over her lap. Her posture is perfect enough to frame. Her smile arrives in small polished portions that suggest innocence and promise accounting. She always places herself at the exact distance where words become missed if challenged. Her ears, sadly, do not respect that distance. Her memory is long enough to walk home by itself. You never say anything reckless near her. Nobody sensible does. Yet the courtyard allows small daring, and thread becomes a safe disguise for other truths. So someone says the green silk snarls when it senses ambition. Someone else says, perhaps all fine thread does. Fatima lifts one eyebrow, a grain of barley, and continues hemming as if born beyond earthly concerns. The murmur moves on before it can leave a footprint. You ask who has quince peel for sore throats. Another woman recommends warm water with honey and a pinch of mint. A third insists that honey works better when borrowed. This is how speech lives here. It folds itself into domestic corners. It smells of kitchen herbs and lamp oil, and never admits to being gossip, unless it wears 3 aprons and carries a spoon. A small dish of chickpeas passes from hand to hand. You take 4 and hold them in your palm to warm first. Leisure teaches even hunger to move quietly. Beyond the courtyard wall, a gull cries from some unseen height. The sound turns your mind at once toward the one window. It always does. There is a second-floor window in the service gallery that shows the Bosphorus on clear days. Not a broad view, and certainly not a generous one. It is more like the world slipping you a folded note. You cannot see it from where you sit. The window faces from the upper corner, beyond the linen stair. Yet everybody in these rooms knows it, because everybody has once angled a task to pass near it. The window is narrow and set deep in thick stone. Its latch sticks in damp weather. One side of the frame carries a tiny scratch where a tray corner struck it years ago and left a silver line in the paint. On cloudy days, the window gives only brightness. On windy days, it gives rippled gray. But on clear afternoons, when the air has washed itself, the Bosphorus appears like beaten blue metal laid between two worlds. You have perhaps 10 heartbeats there, if your errand is honest, 15 if no one meets you on the stairs, 20 if you are very lucky and the basket in your hands looks convincingly necessary. You stand half a step below the sill because the upper stair creaks. You lean just enough to catch the line of water. You do not press your face to the opening like a schoolchild, though the urge exists. From that slit of view, the ships look small enough to tuck into a sleeve. Sunlight flashes from an oar or sail ring. The far shore hovers pale and soft, like something painted and not quite dry. Some days you see a gull swing low over the water. Some days you see only a strip of light and know the rest by faith. That is enough to change the whole measure of your chest. The Bosphorus from that window is not freedom in any grand sense. It is a reminder that space continues. The city breathes around the palace walls, whether you witness it or not. In the courtyard, women mention the window the way others mention weather. One says it is clear enough today for the water to show its little white teeth. Another says she saw 3 boats and 1 ridiculous red sail before noon. A younger girl asks whether the far shore looks nearer in summer. An older woman says no, but patience looks shorter in summer, which may be the same thing. The answer settles over the group like shade. You tell them you glimpsed the water that morning while carrying folded towels to the upper chest. You say the surface looked like blue silk shaken once and smooth flat. Nobody laughs, which means the image lands well enough. Then someone whispers that seeing the Bosphorus through that tiny opening is like being permanently on mute in a meeting you cannot leave. 3 women blink at the comparison as if it arrives from another century, then softly approve it. The palace excels at that feeling. You pass through great rooms and hear decisions being made elsewhere. You hold doors, carry trays, fold cloth, and become part of the calm machinery with no button marked unmute. Still, the little window helps. A sliver of outside can steady a whole afternoon. You return from it able to face another hour of folded linens in careful silence. The women in the courtyard trade their glimpses as if swapping sweets. One saw sunlight on the water yesterday. One saw rain darkening the channel last week. One insists she once saw a porpoise, though this claim grows a tail each time it returns. You listen and add only what you truly know. The Bosphorus is too lovely for embroidery of the verbal sort. The real thing already behaves like a boast. A breeze slips down into the court and cools the sweat at your neck. Pamuk receives it first because he is stretched nearest the fountain's sweet spot. He does not thank anyone, which seems consistent. His tail twitches once against the bench. A thin bell on another woman's sewing box answers with a tiny accidental ring. Pamuk blinks as if the whole courtyard has disturbed his concentration. You count the rise and fall of his flank. He is asleep again, or pretending with great talent. Palace cats understand reputation as well as any courtier. By the 3rd occupied afternoon, the bench has ceased to be furniture. It has become a small constitutional fact. New arrivals glance at it, see the white fur, and adjust their expectations with admirable speed. One woman brings a folded cushion and places it on the ground near the basin. Another uses her rolled shawl. You remain on the ledge because standing up to improve your comfort feels suspiciously close to making a claim. Pamuk extends one foreleg and spreads his toes. The motion is luxurious enough to insult half the courtyard. You forgive him because his ears are absurdly soft and because you have eyes. A junior attendant dares to scratch his chin with one finger. He allows it for 3 strokes and then turns away in the slow manner of an official refusing a petition. She looks honored anyway. You wonder if he notices that he has displaced 6 hard-working women over 3 days. Perhaps that is the whole point of his expression. The fountain splashes against the basin lip and darkens the stone beneath. A few droplets reach the bench and bead on Pamuk's fur without soaking in. He appears upholstered by moonlight and stubbornness. No one says he should be moved for the sake of fairness. Fairness has many homes, but this bench is not one of them. The palace hierarchy can be read in robes, doorways, and occasionally in cat posture. You smooth your skirt over your knees and watch him breathe. There is comfort in his certainty. In a place where permission is counted so carefully, Pamuk lives as if all space has already been approved. The murmurs around you deepen a little as the hour ripens. Hands keep moving over cloth and fruit pits. Voices stay low enough that the fountain remains the senior speaker. Someone asks whether the Bash Kalfa received new rose soap from the stores. Another answers that she did, and that even the soap likely feels judged. This earns a silent bend of shoulders all around. Bash Kalfa Zeynep can make a folded towel reconsider its life. She can inspect a tray and discover moral weakness in the spoon arrangement. Her cane on marble is more informative than most official notices. Yet even she allows this hour because she understands strain the way bakers understand dough. Too tight and it cracks, too loose and it loses shape. So in the courtyard, guarded kindness exists. An older attendant reties a younger girl's slipping scarf. Someone trims a split nail with tiny sewing shears. You share the last of your chickpeas with a woman who has clearly forgotten food while working. The talk drifts toward robes next. It always does eventually. Cloth is language in the palace, and everyone speaks it whether she wishes to or not. A woman from another section murmurs that one of the junior attendants received a fine kaftan lining from a patron last week. Another says the color alone could open doors. A third says the stitching at the cuffs matters more than color, which is either wisdom or envy. You think of the gift hierarchy and almost smile. It is Ottoman influencer culture in its purest form. The right robe from the right hands can turn your whole week into a brighter room. No one says this too sharply. A robe may be luck, merit, strategy, or all three folded together. In the courtyard, such matters are discussed with the same tone used for weather and figs. Fatima Hatun lets a pause stretch just long enough to invite attention. Then she remarks that quality always reveals itself eventually. Her voice is warm honey poured over a knife. You nod as if agreeing with the universal principle of good stitching. It is the safest possible response. Around you, two women suddenly find their own hems fascinating. Another murmur rises from the other side of the fountain. Someone wants to know who has been assigned the upper lamp room this week. The answer comes with sympathy, because the room traps heat and lamp smoke until even patience feels greasy. You say you prefer the linen room despite the dust. Dust is honest, you explain. It sits where it lands and makes no claims. This is the closest you come to almost speaking freely. The courtyard permits small truths dressed as practical comments. The palace cannot object because everyone remains busy, modest, and technically discussing household matters. Now and then someone risks a softer confession. A girl says she misses hearing street sellers from her old neighborhood. Another says she misses washing her own hair by a window instead of by schedule. The words do not linger. They drift up like breath on cool air and fade. No one asks more than is kind. You offer your own small longing. You say you miss standing beside a door without needing to listen for it. The women near you understand at once, which is comfort enough. Then the murmur turns gentle and silly again, because sadness in large portions does not suit this hour. One woman swears she can tell the day of the week by Mehmet's puddle size. Another claims his ewer leaks more when important slippers approach. The theory receives serious consideration. Somebody suggests the ewer leaks out of anxiety. Somebody else says Mehmet leaks anxiety and the ewer simply joins him in solidarity. Even Fatima's mouth shifts at that one. The shift is brief, but you see it. Palace life leaves people many talents, and recognizing a good joke through silence is one of them. A shaft of sunlight climbs the opposite wall and catches the painted edge of a tile border. The blue brightens into something almost wet. Your eyes rest there for a time without effort. This hour never feels long while it happens. It feels folded and careful, like a note tucked into a sleeve. You can spend half of it breathing more deeply and still wish you had just arrived. The fountain does useful work besides hiding voices. Its steady murmur smooths the sharp corners from thought. You find yourself noticing small things you usually step past. A crack in the paving stone holds one brave thread of grass. The cypress nearest the door has bark rubbed smooth where shoulders often brush it. A tiny chip on the basin rim looks exactly like the profile of a sleeping duck. You think that if permission were a physical object, it would feel like this shade, cool for a while, limited in reach, more precious because the sun stands so close. From somewhere above, maybe from the gallery near that narrow window, a breeze brings the faint salt smell of the sea. Not enough to taste, just enough to prove the city remains nearby. The women fall quieter as the air shifts. Some close their eyes for 3 breaths and call it nothing. You tilt your head back to the wall and watch a ribbon of sky between the eaves. Clouds pass there slowly enough to seem thoughtful. You cannot see the Bosphorus from the courtyard floor. Still, the blue overhead feels connected to that silver strip beyond the second-floor window. This is how space enters your day, not by open wandering, by slices, slivers, glimpses, and borrowed drafts. A basket of mending goes around again. You take a small cuff with a loose binding thread. Your needle enters and leaves the cloth in a rhythm as quiet as breathing. Opposite you, an older woman recounts the proper way to remove pomegranate stains from linen. Her method involves cold water, patience, and refusing to panic at color. This sounds useful well beyond laundry. Another woman says the kitchen sent thinner lentil soup at noon. The complaint is so mild it almost counts as praise, yet everyone listens with the tender seriousness due to soup. You add that the mint was still good. Someone replies that mint can save many things. Another says not men, not cats, and not overcooked eggplant. Pamuk lifts his head at the word cats and then, finding no tribute attached, lowers it again. His indifference is so complete it circles back towards style. The courtyard now smells faintly of warmed fabric and human rest. It is a good smell. It is the smell of work paused but not abandoned. You notice how differently each woman spends these few moments. One picks at embroidery she could finish later, but wants to finish now. One simply sits with both hands in her lap and stares at the water as if storing it. One mouths words without sound, perhaps prayer, perhaps a shopping list from another life. One counts stitches under her breath. One watches Fatima watching everyone else and pretends not to. You keep mostly to yourself. Though your silence here is softer than in the corridors. There, silence is duty. Here, silence is company. A soft tap reaches the doorway beyond the arch. Only one tap. The whole courtyard hears it and does not visibly react. One tap from Bash Kalfa Zeynep means she reminds you all that existence remains supervised. It is the palace equivalent of a cloud crossing the sun. No one rises yet. No one speaks louder, but backs straighten a little, and one or two stray crumbs disappear from palms. Pamuk does not move at all. This is perhaps the boldest act in the entire courtyard, though it is impossible to punish. Zeynep might rebuke a human for spreading across communal stone. She will not rebuke that cat and keep her dignity intact. The king does not tap again. The message is complete. Leisure continues under observation, which is to say it continues exactly as before, only tidier. You finish the cuff and knot the thread with neat fingers. Your hands know work even when your mind has drifted to water, sky, and impossible benches. You lay the cuff back into the basket and feel oddly proud of its repaired edge. The women's murmurs rise once more, but now they settle into the calm part of the hour. The playful part has passed. The thoughtful part arrives before the end. Someone says the clear days are hardest because they show you the Bosphorus too well. Another answers that cloudy days are worse because then you must imagine it. Both views seem correct. You say that perhaps the window and the courtyard perform the same kindness in different sizes. One gives you a line of distance, one gives you a square of air. An older attendant nods and says that is enough for a decent soul. Not everything must be grand to be real. She says this while winding blue thread, and it sounds like something learned through long practice. Fatima glances up then, perhaps because wisdom without vanity is hard to answer. Her smile remains exquisite and carefully useless. She returns to her hem. The light begins to change in the way every palace worker knows without checking. Gold gathers on the upper plaster. The shaded stone under your hand feels cooler. Somewhere deeper inside, a door opens and closes with evening in it. Soon the lamps will matter more than the sun. Oil will throw warm gold across the hand-tainted tiles. Rose water will freshen a corridor, and oud smoke will begin its slow wandering from room to room. Your hour is thinning. You feel it like the end of a sip. The courtyard notices too. Women gather their threads and fold their cloth. One checks her scarf edge in the polished curve of a brass box. Another brushes pistachio skins from her lap onto a scrap of paper. You push yourself up from the fountain ledge and smooth the back of your robe. Your knees complain softly, which feels only fair. You have asked them to become stone for a while. Pamuk remains on the bench, now fully turned onto his side, as if the entire concept of schedules belongs to a lower order of beings. The bench is his until dusk, perhaps until winter, perhaps until the moon changes office. You bow your head to that reality, and do not take it personally. A final murmur passes between you and the nearest attendant. She says if the upper window is clear at sunset, she will look once for both of you. You thank her and mean it more than the words can show. That is the kind of freedom this place allows. Borrowed glances, shared news of the sky, a bench denied by a cat, but made bearable by witnesses. Another tap sounds from the arch. This time there are two. 2 taps mean imminent disaster in most parts of life. Here they mean only that the palace has remembered itself and wants its women back in motion. Everybody rises with the speed of people who have no interest in testing the phrase. The courtyard empties in a soft rustle of hems. Slippers whisper over stone. The fountain keeps talking to itself after you all leave, which seems greedy but forgivable. You pass beneath the arch in line with the others, your shoulders square before the corridor receives you. Silence settles back over you, not harshly now, but firmly like a shawl. At the threshold, you glance once over your shoulder. The cypresses hold their shade. The strip of sky stays bright above the walls. Pamuk sleeps on, ruler of the only comfortable bench, and entirely untroubled by policy. Then you turn into the cool marble corridor, scented with rose water and faint smoke. The palace closes around you with its familiar hands. Yet for one measured hour, you have sat in the courtyard nobody could enter without permission, and the air remains inside you. Before sleep takes the palace from your hands, you let a few small pictures return and settle. You see again the evening handoff in the inner rooms, when the day passes quietly into other careful hands. You stand beside the low table with the folded notes, the counted lamps, and the neat little facts that make a household breathe. 1 wick burns low in the blue chamber. 2 towels go to the bath store. 3 bowls come back with only apricot skins left behind. It is not grand work, though it serves grand people, and that is part of its strange charm. You spend your whole day near silk, gold thread, and painted tiles, and then your final duty is still to count towels properly. The palace likes splendor, but it loves lists even more. You hand over keys with your eyes lowered and your fingers steady. You pass on the state of braziers, shutters, cushions, and screens. You note which room wants more rosewater by morning. You note which lamp smokes if the wick is cut too short. You note where Pamuk has chosen to leave a white drift of fur, which is nearly everywhere worth sitting. The night attendants receive all this with the grave calm of women who know that a missing spoon can create more feeling than a missing moon. No one speaks if speech is not needed. Your whole life in these corridors is a little like being kept on mute in a meeting that has no door, and by now you are very good at saying everything with a folded cloth and a lifted chin. The sound under all of it is the soft murmur of the fountains. The smell under all of it is rosewater, warm oil, and a ribbon of oud smoke drifting where it pleases. Then your mind goes back to the last corridor round with Bash Kalfa Zeynep. You still feel the cool marble through your thin soles as you follow one measured pace behind her. The oil lamps throw warm gold across the Iznik tiles, and the blue flowers on the wall seem half awake. Her rosewood cane meets the floor with one dry tap. That single tap means only that she exists, which is more than enough for most people. Another lamp is trimmed, another curtain edge is straightened, another cushion is given the tiny turn that means it is now acceptable to the empire. You move through the corridor with your hands close and your breath quiet. Your fingers pinch one wick lower, your thumb smooths one crease from a coverlet, your sleeve gathers the faint scent of lamp smoke and soap. Zeynep pauses where the passage bends toward the sleeping rooms. She looks at a lamp niche that seems fine to you. It is, of course, not fine to her. Her eyebrow rises by the width of a grain of rice, which is still enough to feel like a full written report. You step forward and trim the flame by the smallest touch. At once the light turns gentler. The wall loses its glare. The room becomes evening instead of late afternoon pretending to be evening. She gives one more tap, which is almost approval. With Zeynep, this counts as a warm embrace. She is your HR manager, building superintendent, and disapproving grandmother gathered into one immovable woman with a cane. Yet even she softens a little at the end of the night. Not in her face, because that would be reckless. You see it instead in what she does not correct. She lets one tray stand where it stands. She lets one lamp remain just so. She lets you pass the final doorway without stopping you again. In palace terms, this is tenderness of a very high grade. And then there is Mehmet, faithful servant of water and enemy of dry floors. You remember the last small disaster with a kind of sleepy fondness now that it is over. He appears at the edge of the outer court with the copper ewer tilted against his hip. He wears the same baffled look he always wears, as if he has just met liquid for the first time. You see the first bright thread of water before he does. It slips from the ewer with perfect innocence, and makes for the marble like a creature returning home. By the time he reaches the threshold, there is already a polite puddle waiting for him. Mehmet stops and studies it with deep personal surprise. The ewer hangs in his hand like a bad idea made metal. No one is alarmed, because this is no longer an event. This is simply Mehmet being followed by his own damp reputation. Even the corridor seems prepared for him. A cloth appears. A foot steps wide. A tray lifts half an inch. The palace is the most aggressively gated community in the known world, with breathtaking Bosphorus views and excellent amenities, yet somewhere within it one leaking vessel still roams free. You almost admire the consistency. Mehmet, to his credit, looks sincerely sorry every time. That sincerity does not dry the floor, but it gives the puddle a certain sad dignity. By the moment he is relieved, the water is gone, the cloth is wrung, and only the shine on the stone remembers him. After that, the night gathers itself in smaller and smaller folds. You return at last to the dormitory with the other Kalfas, each of you carrying the day in that neat hidden way you all have. Hairpins come out one by one and land softly in a dish. Sleeves are loosened. Sashes are untied. A day of posture slowly leaves your shoulders. No one hurries. No one wastes movement. Each woman keeps her own silence as if it were part of her uniform, folded and laid beside her for the night. Even tiredness is orderly here. A blanket is shaken once and spread flat. A pair of slippers is set side by side beneath a bed. A last glance goes to the door, though there is nothing to fear except being untidy under Zeynep's eye by dawn. Across the room, Fatima Hatun arranges her bedding with that flawless calm she wears like jewelry. Her smile from earlier still lingers in memory, smooth as polished silver and about as warm. She has spent 3 years standing just near enough to hear what matters. Tonight, even she grows quiet. Rivalry becomes very small when everyone is removing hairpins and lamplight. The room settles by degrees. One body turns, one blanket rustles, one lamp dims, then another. The final light always seems to wait a little longer than the rest, as if it enjoys being important. When that last glow softens, the stone walls hold the dark with a kind hand. Through those walls you hear the fountain in the third courtyard. It is never loud. It does not need to be. It is only water falling where it always falls, with the patience of something that will still be there when every list is forgotten. That sound reaches your bed as if the whole palace is breathing more slowly now. It washes the marble, the tiles, the lamp smoke, the day's careful silence, and even Zeynep's eyebrow into one steady murmur. You lie under your blanket and feel the weight of service become simple again. You have carried trays, counted cloths, dimmed light, noticed everything, and said almost nothing. At the end of the night, that silence no longer feels heavy. It feels smooth and cool, like marble after the heat has gone out of it. Now the palace seems to close around you in soft layers of stone, cloth, and dim gold light. The night rests on you with the easy weight of a blanket, and the fountain keeps washing the edges off every thought. Beyond the wall, the third courtyard fountain is still there, steady as ever, and that is exactly where you want it. May your dreams be free of Pamak, sitting on the one object you were explicitly told Pamak must not sit on. May no Bash Kalfa ever tap 3 times in your direction. May Mehmet find just once an ewer that does not locate a reason to drip. Thank you for listening. May your mind stay easy, and good night.